They don't think Corvette.
Instantly, I thought Corvette.
Exactly.
And I was
Chevy
like,
guy.
that's not what he's talking about, surely.
Yeah, but like the Ford C6 was like Ford's heavy duty train. So like it'd be the equivalent of a Turbo 400, but some variances in how they do things and bigger clutches, etc. So like a lot of times when you do like a Pro Mod 400, they use C6 intermediate clutches because it's a bigger, more clutch surface area and everything in the trans.
Could you say that?
It's,
would it depend on?
it's an equivalent. It
Off
depends.
camera, he said it shits on the 400. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Well, I said they put C6 parts in 400. But that's the thing. Like, do you want a real good 400, you have to put it in an aftermarket case because the stock case is only good for so much. And then you got to put all different drums in it, yada, yada, yada. You end up, it's a 400 in the basic design. It's not a true, like, the factory 400.
Welcome back to Go Art Podcast. I'm your host, Noel.
I'm Justin White.
Guys, we have Justin White on the pod. He flew in from Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico.
Puerto
I can't say it that well, but yeah.
Say it again.
Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico.
Yeah, I'm learning.
No, I actually said a wrong name of a bottle and they corrected me, but sorry.
You had the whole name wrong.
I said Casa.
He said Casa Azul. It was not Casa Azul.
Oh my god.
But it was very strong.
Guys, today we have a guy that came down from Canada, a special guest. He's building all these cars since I guess he was
He
child,
said he
right?
was born at the track.
Born at the track, right? And
In a van.
in the van. And you know, he's here on the pod and he's been doing a lot of stuff. Actually, want to thank Boyd for setting this up. We're at Bomberos Performance out in Sealy, Texas. If you're in the area or in Texas, you want your car built, make sure you hit him up at Bomberos Performance on Instagram and Facebook. But yeah, let's get into it. We're gonna talk about, you know, the future for him, where he started, the builds he's done. Obviously, he's tuned Boyd's S550 that's on Holley. He pretty much done the whole wiring for it. He's gonna touch more on it as well. But yeah, let's give it up for Merkl.
And he's a drag and drive guy, which is, we haven't gotten to talk to yet.
That's true.
Because, you know, I hold them as like a special breed.
Yeah, he kind of like, you know.
We're done.
But he's
The gangsters.
he say we're done.
Automotive gangsters.
But yeah, Merkl, tell us a little bit about you, man. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Dylan Merkl, I own a business in Brooks, Alberta, Canada. Merkl Motorsport, do a ton of remote tuning for people, and it's kind of a one-stop shop. Guys will drop off a rolling chassis, and I'll do everything from chassis fabrication to building trannies to building motor, like building and machining in-house for the motors, the tuning, the wiring, just about everything. So if anything goes wrong, I'm the guy to blame. There's no finger pointing. It's just if something breaks, I know the guy that did it and who has to fix it. So instead of the pointing fingers, you just get right down to it and have to fix it.
Is that the reason why you're just like one-stop shop? One-man shop?
Basically, I can't stand waiting on somebody like, hey, I can't get this out because I'm waiting on trans for 3 months, or cylinder heads are this far out because my guy's busy, or like just.
But you spoke that like right now you said that if it broke, you're not finger pointing. I think that's a big one because you know that happens a lot.
The industry's so bad. Like you get something, say a motor blows up, the machine shop's going to point the fingers at the tuner. The tuner's going to point it at the machine shop, and then like both of the tuner and the machine shop are going to point at the customer because like how many back-to-back pulls did you actually do up and down the highway? Yeah. It's like,
They'll never tell.
It's like, well, maybe like it was one, right? He's like, well, maybe it was two. Well, maybe it's three.
No, they were just cruising at like 60 and it happened. Remember?
Maybe I was at Buddy's party and I gave all 6 of my friends licks up and down the road, and the intake air temp may have been like 200 and something. Like,
but did you break it in enough?
Yeah, break in.
I was once told that I didn't break the bearings in properly on a motor. Yeah, I called King and they're like, that's not a thing. I'm like, yeah, I didn't think so. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, modern machining. Like, you get that thing, fire that thing up. Once the tune's close enough to be able to get it on the brake, put it on the brake, put load on it, seat the rings.
It's set.
Like a lot of the.
So that's your proper braking procedure.
Well, if you talk to a lot of the ring manufacturers and everything, they say if the honing procedure, everything's good, by the time you basically get the motor together and set valves, et cetera, and degree everything in, like the rings are almost there.
I mean, they used to hone them in with borax, so
Yeah, like
and that worked fine.
yeah. Yeah, like you get like all the old cast ring stuff like that all their fathers had, and they're like, oh, you got to 500 miles, 1,000 miles. It's like the technology has come a long ways, and the machining procedures are a lot better, and just overall knowledge in the industry is a lot better. When stuff's been around for 100 years, you kind of hopefully figured out what you're doing.
Yeah.
But
a lot of people still do the whole mileage thing. I think it's more of a scared engine builder deal, but the engine builders that I've dealt with that I've had no issues with, like Ultimate Engine, we break them in like we're going to drive them.
Yeah,
I mean, I start it up, warm it up, kill it, change the oil.
Yeah.
Okay, no pieces. Start it up the next day. Go out there, start dialing it in, which, like you were saying, kind of get it going, and then change the oil one more time, and she starts seeing boost.
You have that first cut the filter, and as you're cutting it, you're just like, oh, please God. And you open the thing up, it's like, woohoo!
Yeah.
There's nothing in the gold
Well,
rush
there's
this
something.
time.
There's
Gold
just not
rush.
enough.
Yeah, and all of a sudden it's like, gold rush. Man, we got a hell of a clean out today.
Like, oh, that's chunks. No, let's pull that one back out.
Man, like I had I just did a one JZ Sora deal. Like he brought it in, the thing ran and drove, came in totally fine. Never thought anything about it. Do cams, do the head studs, yada yada. Put a ECU Masters black on it and get everything set up for E. Like do all the pump gas tuning, totally fine. Go to pump the tank, put E85 in and get ready to make pulls. Fire the thing up and you just clean it out a couple times and you just hear the knock, what the hell? And I did the oil change after I did the head and everything. You look at it. I'm like, I go back. I keep the oil filters when I do it because they all sit up in my bin. I go cut the filter from when it came in. That thing is full of everything. It's like, well, shit.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I hear Toyota selling new 2J short blocks, which amazing that they do it. Like $3,200 US, you get yourself a brand new 2J short block. Here you go. I'm like, well, you want to do a 2J eventually? It's just going to happen sooner now. We can swap your head over and get going.
That stuff was pretty readily available in Canada, or?
Oh, yeah. Like when you come into the JDM stuff, it's a lot more available because we had all of the JDM cars. You guys had import laws was 25 years before you could bring them in. We were 15. So, like, when I was in high school, like 2005 and all that, everybody, you could pick up, you could get an FDRX7 or an R32 Skyline or 300s, that twin turbo ZX. People were driving them to high school because you could buy them for like $7,000 Canadian imported, like to your door, ready to roll. So like they were all floating around. And when the import laws started coming up, catch up here, like a lot of the cars that are down here came from Canada because the market was just flooded.
Yeah, and since
you
they're
guys
already
got
over here, it's easier to buy them.
Yeah, you guys got everything that every 16 to 20-year-old male in Canada basically beat.
Yeah.
And slammed into every curb.
And would pay a lot more for it.
Yeah, exactly. You got it after it's been blown up a few times.
Yeah.
And you got when the market peaked again, where it was just starting to fall. And now all the JDM stuff, the pricing's gone out of the moon. Like when I have a 1962 Falcon that it's a RB25 single turbo deal. And when I built that thing originally, when it had an RB20 in it, I paid $900 for motor, trans, ECU, everything on that thing. And I remember when I put it in, I had a Coyote E-Manage Ultimate on it, which was a piggyback. But when I did it, all the wiring diagrams and everything was Japanese. And there was no Google Lens or anything at that time. So you're trying to sort your way through translation or find stuff on the internet where this boost controller or this and that's been actually translated for you, and then try to wire everything in. And man, it was interesting.
That was on the older Gretty stuff, right?
Oh yeah, Gretty.
I remember having what was
the old
it?
like Chrome box that plugs in line.
I remember having one of them, and the whole manual's it was in Japanese.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like trying to convert it, and I'm like, that's definitely not what that really says.
Yeah.
I was like, man, those translators were not very good back then.
Oh no.
You have Japanese parts?
Yeah,
I thought you were poor.
I'm poor. That's why I had it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why
We didn't overnight it.
Yeah.
We got it when it came back from Canada.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah, that was good stuff. Yeah, and then that progressed to the RB25. Like the RB25 I built for it, I basically got all the parts for it almost for free because it was everybody else's trash. They had a head from this guy over here that he thought was junk. It's totally fine. Another guy with a short block that ran on a motor and then had some stuff go through it, so it had one piston beat up a little bit and this and that. And like now for the same motor that's in that thing with Tomy Pro Cams and everything, like that's like a $10,000 motor, and I paid probably just bearing and ring the thing basically cost like $500 maybe for the whole deal.
What made you want to go with that motor? Just it was cheap and it was available?
I originally got that Falcon because I had a Ranchero. I drug the Falcon out of a coolie for the driver's door for my Ranchero, and I got it home, put it in the garage. I was like, man, this thing's nicer than Ranchero. Kind of screwed now. So I had to redo the whole floor and everything. I was like, man, what would be cool? Like maybe for once in my life when I go insure this thing, the guys ask, is this a V8 or a V6? Did you change it? I'm like, I can actually say it's still an inline six. It doesn't say what inline six it is, but it's an inline six. Yeah. And then my buddy, I had a buddy that was kind of negative. We were going for lunch for it. I'm like, man, I think I'm going to put an RB in. He's like, oh, that's stupid. Don't do that. I'm like, bet.
I'm doing it.
Like, it's going in.
Yeah.
So I had to do all that, and it was pretty, and then as soon as it was done, I give him a ride. He's like, man, this looks cool. When you go ripping and like the thing's doing 8,000 RPM ripping around, everybody's like looking for like some street bike or something. And it's like, yeah, no, it's just an old ratty Falcon ripping around.
Guys, I just want to say, if you hear like, you know, cars going off and beeps and rings, and we're at a Bomberas during business hours, so just want to.
And that highway out there's bumping.
Yeah.
Took me a good 30 seconds to figure out how to mute that.
Oh, no, you're good. But tell us, go back like when you started getting into like motorsports, and I know we kind of like deviated, but
that's fine. But yeah, no, when we started, so when I grew up in a family. We were racing every single weekend. We were off at the local tracks. My old man was bracket racing all the time. So we grew up like at our local track when I was like 8. It was when the junior dragster deals just started. Like it had been going for a few years, but our local track, it wasn't a deal yet. So basically, I was the first one at our local track that started getting the junior dragster program going. So I was racing at 8. It kept going. And then always helping the old man out in the shop all the time with his stuff. And then you're doing the whole hold the flashlight for him, and then he gets angry and this and that.
You held it wrong.
Allegedly. Allegedly. We'll die on that hill.
My son's going to hate me for that forever. I'm like, you're not holding it right. Hold it where I'm at. But Dad, I am. But no, you're not.
But it's almost one of those things. You've been waiting your whole life to say that. Like,
I know, because I was the guy holding the flashlight before.
Like you're just doing it wrong. But yeah, we did that. So we're at the track all the time. Then you're basically, you could go two ways. So like you'd be like, some people, they're around it too much. They want to have nothing to do with it. Or you go the other way, and that is your life. Like, that's all you want to do. That's all you think about. Like, I played a ton of sports, and then like I was huge into sports, playing every sport I could at the time. Then I totaled off my ankle one time, and I was like, well, kind of done with this.
What kind of sports? Hockey?
Volleyball, basketball, soccer, track and field, badminton.
Everything except hockey.
I was about to say, everything but hockey? I thought you had to play hockey to be a man up there.
Hockey's expensive. Like, I came from a family, like, it was a good family. It's like one of those families you grow up, you don't realize you didn't have what a lot of people had because your parents did such a good job doing it. Like, you grow up, it's like, yeah, we were broke. But you never at any time you realize that you're broke. Like, you're never hungry, like, everything, like, you got to do what you had to do. But hockey was during all the school sports. School sports are cheap, so you go with the school because it's basically kind of subsidized type deal and play all the sports. So I got heavy into that, and then got super competitive. I'm one of the people that I can't play board games. Drinking games, can't do that. Like, we want to go camping with a bunch of buddies. We want to play like Fortune 500 where you throw the football and you got to catch it in a group of people.
What is that called?
So like, well, they call it 500. There's basically a quarterback throwing into a big group of people trying to catch, and he yells at a point count. When you reach 500, you get to go be the QB throwing into the fat. So it's basically a bunch of people just slamming into each other trying to get the ball.
We called that smear the queer.
Okay.
Do we have to edit that? That's what it was called?
Yeah, we never.
We'd throw the ball, and then everybody would tackle that person.
You don't like doing that?
Well, I can't, because I hurt people. The last time I did it, we were out camping, and my wife's like, no. I'm like, come play. He's like, no, you get too competitive. You're going to ruin it. You're going to ruin it. And I'm
because
like, no,
he wanted to play hockey.
I'm like, no. I'm like, I want to, like, I'll be good. I'm not going to be that bad. It was like 5 minutes later, I was like just about to the point, and I was sprinting and running, and I caught the thing and clobbered someone. I looked down. It's my 5'2", redheaded Italian wife, just pissed. I told you so. Like, oh, man, you're right. Just can't. When we go racing, it's like I get famous like Boyd and John and all my guys. They'll be like the disappointed dad look because I just look pissed all the time. Like, I'm a nice person, but I don't look approachable. It's just brutal.
Yeah, that RBF.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah, basically. It's
Sometimes
a big,
that's good. Sometimes
it's a big
you just
thing.
don't want to be
it's
approached.
Great. You don't have you go into the store, you don't end up having to talk to people. Nobody's coming up to you asking how your day is. You're just in and out, get groceries, and that's it.
Yeah.
You're not in there for 2 hours talking about it. That's a whole nother deal. But yeah, so we got into that, and then
When y'all were racing, was it eighth, quarter mile? Do y'all have both?
our track, it developed like we was junior dragster always race eighth mile, and then our local track developed into quarter mile. So like when I turned 16, I had basically hand-me-downs from my old man. It was like a 79 Suburban, like square body deal, but it was a big block cam, headers, and intake with Edelbrock carb, and that's when you start playing with carburetors because you're a 16-year-old kid, you want to make it faster. Like to the point when we used to drive it, like on the street on the firewall, I would have, when we raced it or not, I had a paint pen across the distributor and lines on the firewall. So you leave that thing loose enough so it's like, hey, got to get some. We're going to bump another 4 degrees into this thing. It's like, hey, this thing's on very low octane because you're a 16-year-old. You can't afford the good stuff all the time. Like now it's not going to rattle all the ringlands off this thing. But you drive it to the track, get there Friday night street races and race it all week in a bracket race it. You get there, uncap the headers, the old 3-bolt collectors on it. You take the exhaust, put 1 bolt through it, hang it down, and go be the guy basically run around in a 14-second Suburban with open headers just because you're a kid and think it's cool. And that's the other thing. It's like everything that, if I say anything about any of the speeds or times, you got to realize, like our DA, summertime, when I make draggy licks by the shop, allegedly, like they're anywhere from 5,000 to 6,000 foot DA. And it's just, so everything's just dying. Everything's gasping for you. You get a blower car, it's like, this thing's dead.
Yeah.
Or you like spooling a turbo car up where we live, it's a whole nother deal. Like when we did Sick Week the one year, like we had a SVO, like twin turbo Coyote car with 67, 66s in it. Like in the wintertime in my shop, we go to spool it, take 4.5 seconds to build like 7 pounds.
Jeez.
We go to roll the thing out at the pad, allegedly, and make a lick, like puts it on the transbrake. The thing makes 9 pounds in 1.2 seconds. I was like, what? But you realize, like, you shut the key off on that thing, it's already technically what we're used to. It's making 3 pounds of boost. So the thing's almost lit already. And then we came down and tried running an 850 class with it, and we could not slow the car down enough. Like, it was a struggle.
Yeah.
What year was this? When you were...
Which, for Sick Week, or?
Yeah, when you were getting into the carb and stuff.
Oh, when we were doing when we're getting into...
When you were
like,
16.
Yeah, I was 16, so that would have been like...
I'm not trying to date you or nothing.
That was like, would have been like 05, 06-ish. And that's when I was doing that. And then that's when I started stemming in. For my 18th birthday, I bought myself 1986 Mercury Capri. Because when I grew up as a kid, my old man had... It's my first memories as a kid. He had a 1983 Mercury Capri bubble back deal, but it was he built all the headers and conversion kit to put a 429 Cobra Jet motor in it. Like that thing went 12 O's in the early 90s, and it was, pretty fun car back then. But like I remember my last memories before he sold it, sitting in the back seat looking at the street lights as we're going up and down the main drag in town. I was like, yeah, this thing, like I'm ruined. I'm gonna need one of these. Which sure enough, I got it. Like when I was 14, he took me to town. Like, oh, we gotta go pick up some scrap metal with the trailer. I'm like, oh yeah, cool. Go and pick it up. We roll up to this one shop, and he's like, yeah, I'm like, man, there's a Capri there. And he goes in, and sure enough, like he's loading the thing on the trailer, and like it's beat, but it took me like 3 years to build the thing throughout high school to finish it. I was trying to get it done for grad, didn't get it done, but after that, finally got it done, and it's back when drag rails were just starting to pop off, and it was on. I had like 0304 Cobra replicas on the thing, so it had the 275 40 17 on them, and I remember when I rolled in with that thing, it was like, there's no way those will work. No way those will work. And that thing like won like in our not so great tracks, we went like 130, 137, 136, 60 foots on this thing, and the car weighs like 3,700 pounds.
Yeah, y'all's tracks aren't really known for good traction at the starting line.
Well, and the whole tracks, that could be rough. It's just so much maintenance with the frost heaving. You have such a cold winter.
I was gonna say that's what seems to be pretty universal in Canada, because when I deal with cars that go to the track, we're always pulling power.
Oh yeah,
Always.
Really?
Every time. And I mean, they still run some pretty decent times up there, but
yeah,
it seems like the starting line's always an issue.
It's just way more work for them to do the upkeep on the track. Like you can dump a bunch of money into it and grind the track, so everybody's just used to it. You can spend the money and grind it every couple of years to keep it straight and do everything with it, but it's just tough. And then we have the weather can be crazy. So where I'm from in Alberta, like wintertime will get minus 40 Fahrenheit. And then
what?
summertime, minus 40 Fahrenheit.
Damn.
And
What part of Canada is that? Is that like Toronto or?
No,
is that...
it's like kind of west. Basically, there's the Rocky Mountains.
Yeah.
We're just 3 hours east of the Rockies.
But
Rocky Mountains. So that's right above like Montana.
Okay.
So we're kind of like where we're at. Like you could drive 2 hours either way. You can be in basically like Grand Canyon, like hoodoos and coulees and canyons and stuff. Then the other way, you start getting into the mountains. And we're just in the prairies where everything's hotter and everything's cooler, depending on what time of the year. We get the worst of both. Like in the summertime when we left, check the weather for here in Houston, it's the exact same temperature, but only they're like 60 to 80% humidity, and we're like 0. So everything's just dry.
Which is better.
Yeah, it's a different kind.
Arguably, definitely better.
Oh, it is. It's way better. Less stick.
But negative 40.
So like
That's rough.
Not a
and
chance.
especially in the wintertime because you don't have much sunlight. Like I'll go to work, it's dark. So it's like it's dark till like 8 o'clock, 8:30 in the morning. Then it gets dark again like 4:30 in the afternoon.
I wonder. Damn. So you're the opposite way of like where Alaska is, because Alaska is 6 months of dark, 6 months of daylight.
Well, we're to the point of, we're kind of getting to that point. Like summertime, we'll have, say in like June, July, the sun will be up at 4 a.m. and not go down to 11:30 at night.
Yeah, I experienced that the first time in Nebraska.
Yeah.
It was 10 o'clock at night. We're out street racing, allegedly.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's the sun is still up there. What the hell's going on?
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that was a thing in the States. I knew about like Alaska and a lot of other places, but that was strange.
Yeah, the further north you go, the more extreme it gets. So it's kind of
So does it make y'all like not less competitive, but like does it like
you got to have your stuff on point. So like that's one of the things where you're like trying to make sure you have your parts, everything's ordered in time. Because if you break something up there, like people don't realize how spoiled you are in America down here. You have your summits. You can get stuff same day. Like
Especially
I want to
in
order
Houston.
I want to order something off Summit. Like that's a week. I'm not going to see that stuff for at least a week.
I'm living that now.
If I'm not waiting on parts, because they only ship to Canada out of one warehouse. So you got to wait. If that warehouse doesn't have it, they won't do warehouse transfers. So if that warehouse doesn't have it, you're done until they do a stock order on that.
damn?
And then everything else, and then they go through the border, and then it's just a headache. And
Guys, we're spoiled. Simple as that.
it just makes
I'm
everything tough.
technically still in the States, and it takes me a week. If I order something on Amazon Prime, at least 1 week.
You get Amazon Prime there?
Come on, man. It's not third world.
Man,
Just all spoiled down there.
I know, right?
But Amazon Prime is still a week.
He's a different breed.
Yeah. There's no next day type option on that. Dude.
Could be worse. You could be California where they just won't ship to you.
Yeah, but you kind of bring that upon yourself.
Well, I guess
living in
you-
California.
Kind of like California too now.
Yeah.
Like Austin? No.
Pretty much. But without the guns.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we got where were we on that stuff? Before we snowballed into something else.
You got the Merkl.
Oh yeah, my Capri. So like I bought my 86 Mercury Capri.
Was it a quad eye?
Huh?
Quad
Oh, yeah,
eye?
4i only.
That's my favorite one.
Well, because the Capris, they only made them 79 to 86.
Okay.
There was never an aero car because they use, like the bubble back Capris is what they use in Trans Am racing because the bubble back hatch is so much more aerodynamic than the Mustang hatch. There's a reason. And also they worked better for no prep stuff because you have this giant glass bubble. Huge weight, way behind the axle, up high, really tall. So you get a lot of that rotational mass on it. When that thing starts pitching, it helps the thing actually weight transfer hard. So I bought that Capri, and it was originally, somebody had swapped in like a 5-liter CFI motor out of like a Lincoln or something in it. And I found an RS car that allegedly nobody knew who the owner was. So I was just giving it. And I pulled the motor and trans out of it. So it was so the 86 high output, yada, yada, SEFI, ECU, and the T5. So we did that, put it in, and then started playing with it. And then that's when I started getting into tuning because I was like, man, I did all this stuff to this thing. And then you do the research, you get the DA1 ECU from like an 87, 88 Fox body. You put that in, then you get order up a Tweezer RT, which was like the logging piggyback stuff you put on the back of, go into the chip locator and like go through all the tuning software with a bunch of scalers that mean nothing. You're just changing stuff and waiting to see the change. Like, did that make it better or worse? Better or worse? So you like.
Was this live editing or was it chip burning?
Well, you could do it live, but you had to write it. So
it was like an emulator, like the ostrich emulator or something, where you're It was still a chip, but you can adjust it
plugged,
live.
Yeah, it plugged
Run on RAM.
It plugged onto the same chip port on the early style EEC4s or whatever, and so you could live tune it, but you can
But
so
you
it run
have to,
off.
once
It
you
run
were
off
like,
the laptop.
this is good, you would burn that into it.
Yeah, it would run off the laptop while you're real time tuning it. But then when you shut, like you're at idle, you shut the thing down. You have to then write permanent to because it had another 4-position switch, so you could hold 4 tunes on it.
Okay.
So you could have a couple different setups for it, and that's why I started tuning that stuff. And I remember taking that thing to the track, and I had one guy come up that was a local tuner shop there. He's like, man, what are you using for tuning this? And I was telling it all. He's like, man, that's pretty impressive for your age to figure that out. I kept plugging away with it, and then finally I got tired of that and finished my other Capri, which was an '83 Capri that I spent. I learned how to do auto body on that, and because we sprayed the thing in our garage, did all the chassis stuff, put a 9-inch in it, all the best of eBay's finest parts at the time, because that's where you bought stuff. Like, I still got a customer that uses the eBay Pro Comp 210 CNC heads on from that thing, and they've been amazing. They've been on about 5 of my customers' motors and just cycled through. They've been amazing. And so we built a 408. That's where I learned how to do all the motor stuff. 408 for the car, put it in, and that thing in RDA, NA on pump gas would go 1080s on motor, and it was a heavy car. And that, you constantly keep playing with that car, and it progressed and progressed and progressed. And that's one of the problems you have with your personal cars. I don't know if you've experienced it as you're going. The more you know, the less you want to go back into one of your cars. It's because you know how you did it, and man, I really should cut all that out and redo that. Or I could do this way better. I could route this better. So it's a slippery slope.
But most of the time we don't do it.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, it worked?
Mine's still got issues. It just sits. I'm like, I'll get to it.
Yeah, exactly. My 83 Capri, I've had all this stuff put back together forever. It's been down for 10 years. Before I started the business in 2018, it was one of the things that got held over. And just before I started the business, start a family. So you start doing the family stuff with 2 kids and getting the business rolling. And then you feel guilty working on your own stuff when there's all this customer stuff not done. And sometimes you get into the whole thing where customers will see you work on your own stuff and their stuff's not getting done, you get grumpy with it. So
I've dealt with that a lot.
yeah. So
but they don't realize that we use our stuff to learn.
Well, and they don't realize that, when they leave their job, go home on Friday or clock out at 5, they realize that's not their work's not calling them back in and asking them questions constantly, usually. But in this world, I've almost made myself too available to some guys, but there's a really good guys, you'll do anything for them.
I know. I was up till 2 a.m. tuning the other night. My wife's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I just want to finish this car. I just want to get this one done. You kind of get into it. You get excited about a project and you just want to put everything in it. And,
you want to make sure you provide what you're capable of doing to the customer.
Right.
But with Manuel, with all the midnight truck guys, they'll be out testing. I'll be laying in bed. It's have my phone on vibrate, laying on my chest, so when I get the message that they made a lick and I sent a log, it vibrates and wakes me up. I pull the laptop from the side of the bed, wake up, check the logs, make some changes, and we go make another lick. There's some nights with it's 3 in the morning, and then I got to be up at 5 with the kids, get everything ready, go back, drop them off where they need to be, and go back to the shop and open the shop, and then function like a normal human being. It gets tough, but you just get desensitized to it, and that's just the way it is.
And then time zone change.
Oh, yeah.
You guys
Time zone change.
Yeah, some of it's not. It's not so bad. Where I live, it's only an hour behind here, so it's not too bad.
Yeah. Sometimes, though, I'll do in Israel or Qatar or something like that. It's a 7-8 hour change.
Yeah.
And they're like, all right, we're going to get on the dyno tomorrow morning. I'm like, that's 2 a.m. for me. I'm like, I guess I'm working late tonight.
Yeah. What time's that again? Yeah, I got some guys in Saudi Arabia. It's okay, dude.
I just keep the world clock on my phone so I know what time so I can quickly go through and see.
You put it, when it's in your phone, you put where they're from or what time zone.
Yeah.
It's put so-and-so +8, +2, -2.
It's not a bad idea.
Oh, I didn't get it. Everybody's in my phone as their name, what they, first name or last name, what car it is, and what I did to it. If it's a customer car that went through the shop, it's 95 Fox Body HCI, heads cam intake. And they call us oh yeah. And he's oh, you remember me? I'm yeah, you got that 92 Fox with
my whole phone's full of that.
The 11 Rs and the E303 cam, yada yada yada. It's oh yeah, you got a good memory. I'm yeah. I got
do you have daylight savings?
Huh?
Do you have daylight savings?
Oh yeah, it's a mess.
Yeah. So they have it in Canada.
Well, in our province we do. The one province over there they don't. In Saskatchewan they don't have daylight saving time, but we do in Alberta. So it kind of throws everything for a loop too there.
So we don't have daylight savings in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
So it gets real weird.
So you get that extra.
Yeah. I'm like, oh wait, my schedule starts at 1. Now it starts at 3.
Oh, Jesus.
Nice.
Yeah, no, that's wild. But yeah, so.
But so the Mercury.
The Capri,
The Capri. What motor was in that?
That was originally a V6 car so it got completely converted to everything V8. Did all the V8 spindles.
What V8?
Well, it was a 408 now.
LS?
It was. No. 9.5 deck.
I know. That's what I'm saying. You gotta let us know.
I guess.
Because everybody's going to
used to be back in the day. You say 408, everybody's like, oh, yeah.
That's exactly
351 Windsor deal.
See?
LS.
I knew he would think.
Man, nobody was LS swapping that stuff back then. Like, it wasn't readily available. There wasn't C's of that stuff in a junkyard yet. It wasn't a common deal. But yeah, so we did that. And like, it eventually progressed. Like, that thing ended up, so before it came apart the last time, like, so it was like again, still 408, like stock C8 block, like the early style Ford 351 blocks. They're a little bit different deck heights. So they're like a 9.48 deck height versus later post 73 blocks are all like 9.5 deck. So you get some weirdness in all the rotating assemblies and everything. And then ended up actually getting a set of Causey P38 heads for the thing, and then put a couple kits on it and dry sumped it. And so I make it kind of one of those cars that does everything. Because it was, you drive it to work every day. You want to have fun with it. So, and I always kind of viewed it as putting skinnies on a car that you're going to street drive. It's useless. Like if you're going to go make tugs and drive it hard, and a kid runs out across the street, and you got to stop the car. Like those little skinnies, they're not doing all your braking power's on that front. Like that's where the weight transfer goes. And if you don't have brakes and tires on it, like you're going to have a bad day.
Especially if the roads are not that great.
Oh, exactly. When you're swerving potholes and stuff.
Yeah. So here it's not a big deal, but up there, I'm sure.
Yeah, you guys have concrete and nice stuff down here.
Or if a moose walks out in front of you.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing there.
Oh, yeah.
I was just telling him that. I had a customer in a truck, and he's like, man, I almost hit a moose. I said, what? He's like, a moose. I'm like, man, those things are pretty big. And he was even saying the same thing. He's like, yeah, you hit him at the knees, and the rest of it comes at you.
Yeah, people don't understand. Like, the best way to describe a moose is basically you take a cow, put the thing on stilts, and put some type of rack on the top of it. Like, and imagine you put that thing on stilts. So what's going to happen when you clip that thing off at the knees? It's just all of the weight just goes through the cab of the vehicle.
Yeah. And apparently it's a big issue.
Oh, yeah. Well, around where I live, we don't have, we just got the deer and smaller animals because we're far enough from the mountains.
Yeah.
You get into there, you get the elk, the moose, and it gets rough.
Yeah, these guys won't go out at night because of it.
Yeah.
He's like, you'll hit a moose.
And those guys, they don't care. It's like, I weigh half as much as your car.
Yeah.
Like, I might die, but I'm going to take you with me. I'm going to take your pride and joy out with you.
And they swim. Did you know that?
Well, yeah, they can swim, and that's half the reason they got such long legs is for river crossings and stuff.
You've never seen a moose, have you?
In person?
Yeah.
Fuck no.
Yeah. Cue up a picture of a dude standing next to a mouse.
Make sure you add that to this. Most people don't know how big a moose is.
Yeah. There's got to be a picture of
the last
an
moose,
average size
the last
adult
moose I saw, which was a smaller one by the Grand Canyon, all I could see was its pecker.
Yeah.
That's how big that thing was.
Yeah, just swinging all proud right in your face.
It was like, what's up, dog?
Right.
Want to shake my hand?
What trans were you running?
That car there was a C6, and that was one of the things.
Not to get confused with the Corvette.
Yeah. Ford.
Explain.
You say C6, C4 to a Ford guy, they understand. Because they don't think Corvette.
Instantly, I thought Corvette.
Exactly.
And I was
Chevy
like,
guy.
that's not what he's talking about, surely.
Yeah, but the Ford C6 was like Ford's heavy-duty train. So it'd be the equivalent of a Turbo 400, but some variances in how they do things and bigger clutches, etc. So a lot of times when you do a Pro Mod 400, they use C6 intermediate clutches because it's a bigger, more clutch surface area and everything in the trans. But as I was growing up, my old man, he was kind of always tinkering with the Ford C6, and he developed and designed his own trans brake valve body. And then slowly progressing, messing with it over the years, he's become the world's guy to go to for Ford C6s. He ships them to Australia and Sweden and all over the place.
What's his name?
Frank Merkl. And he was so busy with them, just to the point, he on some of the 460 Fords forum sites back in the day on the forums, he would put up the whole build procedure, what clutch clearances, get what parts, what Torrington bearings, how to machine what, to what clearances, do all this, and guys are still do it. And like it started to slow down because core availability, because he would always build the trans brake valve bodies out of a factory early core. And they're starting to dry up when he's doing 150 valve bodies or so a year and trying to get them out. It's really hard to get cores.
What about making like a billet valve body?
That's the thing. Like it's a small one-man guy doing it. It's the investment to do it is kind of tough. Think how much money you got to put up to it, and then what are you going to get out of it? Like how many are you going to sell to justify it? Like
It's all in who you know.
Exactly. And that's the thing. That was one of the problems with a C6 is because a lot of people don't realize, like you take a 400, you have to cut the bell off, you can put an aftermarket, you can put a bell housing on it to make it fit whatever motor you want. The Ford C6, nobody ever really did that. So you're basically married to, and Ford had so many different bolt patterns. So like you had your Ford FE big blocks. That was a different bell housing pattern than like the 385 big block bolt pattern. Or
so you couldn't just swap it like GM does.
Yeah, or like their conventional small block, like the 302, like A2 deck, or the Cleveland 9.2 deck, or the Windsor 9.5, 9.48 deck. So they had a different bell housing pattern on that too. So if you wanted to do this, you had to swap everything into that case.
Jeez.
So
do they make an aftermarket case for them?
No, they do not make anything. They don't make a bell. They don't make anything for it. So we got into, with one of my customers here, approach. He's a good Ford guy, and I built him an 84 SVO twin turbo Coyote deal, 67, 66 is on it, on Holley EFI. And he used to have a C4 in the car for all the time, and then he ran into some problems with it. We started to get to the power limit of the C4. So my old man built the C6, and I was like, it ain't that hard. If somebody else figured out how to do it on something else, I'm kind of the guy that's like, I can figure this out. One guy can do it, I can teach myself how to do it myself. So we ended up machining the front pump half. So, because one of the problems the C6 has on the front pump, where the bolts go through to hold it into the case, they're not machined the same distance. So you have to take the front half apart and true everything up. So you can use the same size spacer to put a bell on it, and then take a Turbo 400 bell, weld the bell up, because the C6 pump is so much bigger than a Turbo 400. Mm-hmm. So normally the bolt pattern would be outside of the actual bell housing. So you weld it up and then remachine the bell, and we made it so we could put like a modular bell house, Turbo 400 bell adapted to a C6, so you put it behind everything. And then you have everything we want. So for the drag and drive stuff, we did that, and then put a 308 gear in the back. So you grip down the highway, it's nothing. It's old hat for the thing. Coyote's just chugging along. And then it's basically, you change the starting line ratio. It's like if you had a set of, with the Ford C6, it's got a 246 first gear. So you do that and put a set of 308s in the back. Your starting line ratio gets closer to like if you had a sassier set of gears in the back and a glide, like a 184 or 169 gear set. You get pretty close to that starting line ratio. So you kind of get two birds with one stone with it. And you run it out. You can maybe run it through the second gear. Like you end up with some weird quirks with shift drop between, just you don't have as tight of gear drops because of the actual gear ratio differences gear to gear, but
they don't have a lot of customizable gear sets.
They have some. They do have some. Like it's a low gear set, so it's kind of an opposite way you want to go for the first gear deal. Again, it's for the older Ford stuff. You don't have basically as lucky as the GM world, where everybody makes everything for it. There's tons of aftermarket support. We're kind of stuck in, you get a couple quirky guys, like one guy, he put a ton of money into something and developed a part. And the whole group runs off that one part. Where you get two guys that do something, you're kind of married to the one guy and how he does it. You don't like it, too bad.
You know what that reminds me of? The 2J stuff.
Yeah.
They were saying the same thing on the 2J world when they were coming up Titan, when we did Titan's podcast. Yeah. They were saying that they didn't have a lot of people that had access to making parts, so they communicated over email. Yeah. Because there's no forums or anything yet.
No, through owls.
Mm-hmm.
They
carrier pigeons. Yeah.
And just pray a plane don't get them.
But that they would basically find one guy that would make the part, and then everybody would run that part. Yeah. And then so I guess the Ford world's kind of like that.
Yeah, it's kind of got into it. And then
would it be? Sorry to cut you off, but would it be like is it a superior trans than a 400? Could you say?
Or would it depend on? It's an equivalent. It
off
depends.
Camera, he said it shits on the 400. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Well, I said they put C6 parts in a 400. But that's the thing. Like, you want a real good 400, you have to put it in an aftermarket case because the stock case is only good for so much. And then you got to put all different drums in it, yada, yada, yada. You end up, it's a 400 in the basic design. It's not a true, like the factory 400. Where like, we have a personal car, it's a stretch wheelbase 90s Fox body, like a 108 wheelbase, 90s Fox body, big tire car, like a 712 big block Ford, like C460 had to deal with a couple kits on it. And like that thing weighs 2,900 pounds. And like when it's on 2 kits, probably makes like 2,000-ish wheel. And we'll just have to do fluid changes in it. And like a band adjustment here and there, just trying to stay on top of it.
Well, that's,
And so that's another thing. Huh?
Do you street drive it?
That one, not yet. I spent a bunch of time and money to make it so we go around to a lot of the street car events now.
Would you street drive a 400?
Oh, well, yeah. Well, everybody says that you can't street drive a 3-speed. What do you think everybody did from 1950 to 1980
Right.
to the 700 R4 was killing itself?
So this argument recently, because his editing.
Stop.
Just
No,
throw them under the
No,
bus.
let it roll. All right. So basically, I had said that when they swap these modern cars, that people don't daily them. Not that you couldn't,
Well, but
would you take a car, right? That's 4,000 plus pounds, and put a 400 in it, take a 10-speed out, put a 400 in it, and would you still drive that to work every day? If you had to, if you didn't have to.
Well, I would. But
You wouldn't, right? Once you swap that, it's a track car.
I'm a different guy.
said
He's from Canada and he does drag and drives. That's different.
Like people don't realize.
Hold on. Most of those cars that he said are not 4,000. That's
They're
the thing.
lighter
than that.
What people,
Yeah, no, but you tell them it's 4,000 because it makes everything way more impressive.
Right?
well, our cars.
He's like, yeah, this thing weighs 4,200 pounds. You roll across the scale and the thing's like 3,750. It's like, yeah.
Well, like
Not even.
Cover that shit up.
3,200.
the CTSV I have a couple, but the one that we have, it makes about 1,800.
Yeah.
But that car legitimately is 4,400 on the scale.
Yeah.
You know how fun that is to drive with a 400?
Well,
Not.
that's the problem that people don't realize with.
And we don't have gear ratio. We don't have different gear ratios for the rear end because it doesn't have a 9-inch in it.
Yeah.
So we're stuck with the 323 it came with. So it works good at the track, but on the street, it's not that great.
Well, and that's a problem you have. Like a lot of people don't realize when you have your 400 and stuff to mitigate heat because you don't have a lockup converter. So that sucker, if you put a ton of gear in it, drive down the highway, that thing's slipping, making heat.
Yeah.
If you have a high stall converter in it, which you probably do if you have a 3-speed trans of the thing that you converted to make it go fast. But you can still drive it. Like people don't realize.
Yeah, it's not that
people
you
get
can't.
spoiled.
It's not that you can't.
It's like you
that
go-
you just typically wouldn't. And then you get these guys that are like videoing on their way to work. They're like, daily driving my Turbo 400. I'm like, bro, if you had to video that, it's probably because you don't daily drive it.
But it's one of those things. Like there's different levels of people what they'll do. Like I talked to Boyd and that stuff, and he's like, I tell him, it's like, yeah, I don't in the summertime. I don't daily anything with AC. Like I just don't. It's just as
that's
hot.
because you live where it gets negative 40.
Yeah, but in the summertime.
Try that here.
Yeah, but in the summertime we're the same temperature.
Without
It's just
the humidity.
But it's still hot.
That's
but the thing
that's
is,
a big difference.
if you don't have AC, if you go hop in your truck with AC, you come into a garage without AC, you realize, man, this sucks. I was kind of spoiled there. But if you're miserable all day long in the heat, you don't have those peaks and you're just miserable. You're not like, oh, this feels good. You're just like, this sucks.
Like I went to a race at Texas Motor Speedway and I had to keep the AC off, right? Yeah. And you're like, oh, I can tolerate it. It's not a big deal. My laptop wouldn't even stay running. It was freezing and glitching because it was so hot. Like, it's not. Have you been here in the summer, like outside, like that over there?
Yeah, 100 and something.
Yeah, you ain't driving a vehicle like that
not
around here. You will perish. You will die.
I don't know.
It gets 110 and 80% humidity.
Yeah, the humidity though.
You will die.
I can see the humidity being goofy.
It's the humidity. It's not. It doesn't matter about the number because I can go drive with no AC in Nevada, no problem. In Vegas, 115. It's not that bad.
You'll just be
you get a little
sticky.
bit of wind, you're fine.
You're full of shit.
I'm dead serious. I've done it multiple times.
You can
He's full of
drive it.
shit.
You're not gonna be.
You're not happy, but you're okay. You're not sitting there pouring sweat. Here, it gets 90 outside and you can't breathe.
Well, it's pouring sweat.
like
Actually, no. When we came out here, I got off the plane because our DA is so bad. We get here and it's hot and humid, but I'm like, man, like this is nice. It's like
'Cause you got
I can
air.
breathe better.
Yeah.
Like people don't realize it. They get up. You go somewhere with the DA's real high. Like people used to go race like in Colorado. You
What?
go the mile high. You go like you're running up and down on the stage. And I was like, oh man, I'm gassed. It's like yeah. Like,
Yeah.
there's no oxygen here. Like,
I-
you
I
hear
would-
that turbo car that's been trying to get on the brake in the pits for 25 seconds?
We went
it's
to
feeling the same thing.
Pikes Peak, and my daughter's like, I want to run up that hill right there. We're not to the peak yet, but we're getting there. We're probably, I think, 12,000 feet or something. And I'm like, all right. I get out the car, and this was when I was heavier. I didn't even make it to the base before I couldn't breathe.
Damn.
And I'm like, what the hell's going on? We get to the peak, and I told my wife, I'm like, I'm gonna have to sit in the car.
Yeah.
I guess I got altitude sickness. I couldn't take it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot different. And every time I travel, we raced at 10,000 feet DA in Arizona. And I remember we had a CTSV. It made like 900, made like 1,000 something on spray. I remember watching the guy next to me as we were running on spray, everything all out, and I figured we could have a conversation. That's how slow the cars felt.
Oh, yeah.
That car run like, I think it was like a mid 9-second car on blower.
Could have had a podcast.
And it ran what, like a 10.3 the first pass, and I'm like, put that back on the trailer.
Yeah. You know,
People don't realize-
You look at the log, it's like, man, this thing's down like 6 pounds of boost.
Yeah, people don't realize that once you get into that altitude, like what you're having to deal with. When you're like, man, I'm running fast up here, you come down here, it's
Yeah, the blower efficiencies are a huge thing. You realize the blower's not near as efficient at altitude because, like, you're spinning the thing way harder to make the same boost somebody like try to make real air.
Yeah.
That people at sea level are spoiled just to have. And the same thing with turbo stuff.
But once you start getting the boost, couldn't you could offset it by just adding a few more pounds at that point, right?
Well, you do, but you start spinning the blower hard. You're spinning the blower harder. Your intake air temps are going up.
Well, I'm talking about the turbo.
Yeah, but
'Cause
turbo stuff.
the
Well,
blower stuff, you're limited ultimately.
depending
no
where
matter
you are
what.
on the compressor map, you start
Yeah.
spinning it harder. Like you might, where you're happy at sea level, you put that thing in high altitude. Maybe you're out of the compressor map. Like
That's it. Nitrous.
the
There's your
efficiency-
fix.
Yeah, you get that back up.
Altitude in a bottle.
Exactly. You give it that little.
Yeah.
Give it a shot of little cocaine, and you're good to go.
Then again, on that hill, it's still.
It's a
I
different
sprayed it.
world.
It still wasn't that much better.
That's why so many of the guys, like when they do that stuff, they do turbo deals and they have a progressive. Like you'll run an like a weather station sensor in there, and you can run it, say in a Holley or wherever. You can have a 2D boost map that's going to modify your boost target as altitude climbs. So you're compensating the power level by the boost map.
You know how you really fix all that?
Stay at sea level.
Tesla swap.
Test and swap.
I'd die.
Tesla swap.
Tesla.
I knew that would get them.
Man, yeah, I can't
Because
do
you know
that.
what they run at sea level?
The same.
The same thing.
Damn.
Actually, you get up on the mountain and be faster because you don't have less air. The wind resistance.
That's right.
Technically,
Look.
it's better.
Look at that advantage.
Yeah.
Then again, Elon will be over there limiting you anyways.
So what are you doing with my car?
Like, slow down.
Yeah, you're speeding, sir. Let me lock up the brakes on you and put this thing down the hill.
Right.
That would be kind of cool to do in some of these drag and drives. Just do like the Tesla just in the front, right? So you got that little extra all-wheel drive action.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but then you got to charge the thing everywhere. But like, what was it? The one?
No, you use the engine. What are you talking about? It's a hybrid.
Oh yeah, but
What? You
I
make
guess-
2,000 horsepower. You might as well use some of it.
I get and the thing is, if you had the Tesla on the front, if you worked regenerative braking into that thing, go drive the thing down the highway, drag the brakes on that thing, charge it up.
There you go.
Going through the mountains on like Rocky Mountain Drag Week,
Boom.
you could charge that thing going all the downhills. Oof.
It's so
And
funny.
then all of a sudden the rules are going to come up. It's like, hey, no.
Yeah. I did a 30-minute drive the other day, and I was like, man, my battery hasn't went down at all. I'm going through the mountain. I'm just coming down the mountain the whole way. I'm like, it went up.
Yeah.
And then I drove stupid, and it went way down.
Yeah. You realize, oh.
But I think AEM has a controller for one already, and I've heard Holley was working on one, but
Well, that's one of those things. The Holley giant curtain of it, they own AAM now and everybody else.
so my biggest thing for AEM, can we touch on standalone controllers?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. So basically, a lot of people, they always ask, they're like, why Motec? Why Holley? Why Fuel Tech? Why this? Why that? My reason I ran Holley before was because when I was at the track, if anything went wrong, and it happened, I had an issue with boost control. I was in Maryland. A motorcycle guy came over. He said, hey, man, it's your solenoid. I'm like, what? He goes, let me see the log. Showed him the log. He had a solenoid in the trailer. The billet solenoid set up.
Yeah.
He said, here, put this in. He pulled mine apart, showed me where the issue was. It had like a piece of trash in it or something.
Yeah.
But like, boom, everybody's got the parts. Everybody has it. It's available.
Your
That's
laptop
why.
dies, and you're like, hey, you got V6?
Everybody
Sweet.
has V6 on their laptop.
Yeah.
If they're
Some
tuning.
variety of it, yeah.
But so what makes you like Holley more? Because obviously you've experienced pretty much everything.
Yeah, I've
You hate
tuned.
Motec, you said.
I didn't say I hate Motec. I just say I am not fortunate enough to have the money to play with Motec or the customers to play with
Right.
Don't
Motec.
get me wrong, me neither.
Yeah, but sometimes you wheel yourself in, you got the customers to play
Not
with
yet.
Motec.
Not yet.
Not yet.
It's coming, but
Not
not
yet.
yet.
But yeah, no, so we ended up, because I've done everything, I came up like doing all the like the Mega Squirt world.
Oh boy.
And then you jump into this other stuff, it's like, wow, this is nice. Like, you mean
Yeah.
when I open a tune file for somebody else, I don't have to go into the file, find out what firmware it is, download another firmware, make a new project just to look at the dude's tune to be like, hey, yeah, the IAC frequency's wrong.
Then again, Holley firmware updates are
Yeah, that can be a
terrifying.
pain. But at least it's not too, like, one, you can open it, but to look at it and not have to update, but it's still,
But
everything's
doing
got
the
its-
firmware update is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Because then they brick.
Man.
But luckily, if you're at the track, somebody probably has an extra.
But like, well, yeah, you get a lot of people that don't realize they go to update the firmware on their Holley. So if you're updating your firmware on the Holley, make sure the laptop's plugged in. You do not have a screensaver that pops up.
And
I
that you're
tell you-
not touching the laptop.
Yeah, you make and like don't start the firmware update and just go somewhere. Like, crack a beer, have a coffee, stand there and just be like, make sure shit goes okay. Like a dog doesn't come through and yank your power cable off of it, or yank a USB cable, or the laptop falls off the roof, and then it crashes everything, and you got to send the thing in and get firmware updated.
Do you keep one of those little mouse jiggler things? You ever seen those?
Which the
So you plug it in the USB and it'll move the mouse, so the laptop won't sleep.
Oh, yeah.
oh no, I've never.
I had a laptop that kept going to sleep and I couldn't figure out why, and it was aggravating me.
They have an app
So
now.
I bought this little mouse jiggler thing, and just whenever I'm doing a tune, I'll just plug it in, just to make sure that it doesn't go to
I
sleep.
just got everything off. Like that
They
thing.
have apps
That thing
for it
isn't
now.
turning the screen off until it is dead. But
Look, I deal with computers a lot, but I'm not computer savvy,
yeah,
which is kind of funny. But
you use a computer.
right, I know how to use the software I've got. It's about where we draw the line.
Yeah.
But so you started with the Mega Squirt and all those.
Then progress like through when I started doing a lot of the JDM stuff. You get into the AEM Series 2s. We did a bunch of like 2J stuff, 1J stuff on the Series 2 ECUs. And then it progressed into doing the ECU master stuff, which I started doing a lot for all the JDM stuff and other import small displacement stuff, just because they have such a nice plug and play platform that customers will put it in, plug and play. Their bass tune's pretty close. It'll get them up and rolling to get it to the shop to be tuned. And also they have a lot of nice features like all the rolling anti-lag, launch control, and everything like that. And then slowly progressing, I got into the Holley Dominator stuff a lot. Probably like 2014-ish, 2012-ish. I had a customer that had that bought a car off of John Causey. Well, down the road from John Causey. It was originally a car that John Causey put together when he originally repopped the Boss 429 heads, the Ford Hemi head. And he put a car together with it was a 589 aluminum block deal with T56, did all this stuff, and he ended up with it and had some unfortunate events with a company that did some work on the car and ended up hurting the motor in it. So when we took it apart, we went through it all, fixed it all, talked to Causey, got another cam that they did in the magazine articles for when they prototyped the heads and stuff. So we had a cam there was kind of a paper trail that it was once in the motor, but wasn't ever in the car, because with a stick it was way too big. It would have bucked and jerked around because they never changed the rear gear in it. So you run a T56 in this thing, and it's got a pretty big cam in it. You're going down the alley, a gravel alley, trying to park the thing in your garage, and you're riding the clutch the whole way, because it's like the thing will do, God knows, like mock chicken in first gear. So we ended up swapping that out, put a C6 in it with a set of kill duff shifters and nobody understands how they work. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen a kill duff shifter. They're like the old Hurst lightning rods. that you
Oh
can tug
yeah.
it. And it's just one of those, like, it makes people talk. It looks cool. So we did that, and then I put a Holley Dominator on it. So that's an intertwined into all the stock stuff. So like the factory tack works. So the front crank trigger is actually the 4.6 3-valve crank reluctor, but it's on the back of the balancer on the Ford big block balancer, run the factory crank sensor, which is teed into the factory ECU and the Holley back, which was a whole other thing, dealing with all ground noise and filtering and everything, make sure everything's happy, doesn't lose sync. and then modify the distributor. So you take the distributor part, take the 8-tooth reluctor because it was on an MSD and carbureted before, take that, knock 7 reluctors off so it's now a 1X cam sync. You drill it, put a set screw in it because then you can clock it, make everything is phased correctly, and then do that. And we converted the thing to EFI and did a bunch of stuff, and then little things like put a vacuum pump on it. Made a world of a difference in anything because you got a big displacement, big block driving around, and then we have a giant cam in it. So yeah, power brakes. How are you gonna run power brakes? It's like, well, run it off the crankcase vacuum because it makes more crankcase vacuum at idle and everywhere else than it does driving around. So the thing's got off the valve cover, goes the brake booster. That's got power brakes, AC, everything works like a factory car.
That's pretty cool.
And it has like basically a factory catback system on it. So like when the exhaust is closed, the thing, it's quiet, but you know something's up. But the amount of back pressure that's in that thing, like you go stand behind the pipes and it feels like somebody's like punching you in the knees. And then when you open it up, like it's a rowdy sound. It's probably one of the best sounding NA cars I've ever heard in my life. The thing's just asserts, like you know it.
It's big block.
Yeah, but the whole thing, because some of the other stuff, like we ended up, over the years, we converted it to E85. So it went on E85, then we ended up putting like another machining a throttle body spacer and went to a bigger throttle body because as we're reviewing data, we look, we're making pulls on it. Like technically, like we're at 80. By the time we'll start the map sensors reading like say 80. Start the pull will be 89 kPa. By the time we reach the top of the pole, we're down to 83 kPa.
What's your KPA?
Well, so Barrow, like when we're sitting there,
it's different
like
here.
91.
All right, we're 100 here usually.
Yeah, we're like 91, 89-ish. So like we do that. We're like, hey, so there's a lot to be left here. So we put a bigger throttle body on it and did carb spacer because all this stuff fits underneath the stock hood. So you slam the hood shut, aside from the decal on the side of the car and the custom wheels Causey did that say Boston Iron on it, you would not know this is not an 08 4.6 3-valve deal, which they're not known for being the greatest combination or the most powerful unit.
Some people love them though. Some people
Everybody's
really
got their
love
flaws. Don't get me wrong, like the 4-valve stuff, amazing. Like the 4-valve mod motors, they did great. The old 2-valve mod motors, like those things are one of the most dependable thing. Like you look at a Crown Vic, when I used to pull wrenches, like it was during the time when every taxi company had a Crown Vic. All of our local RCMP, which is our police, had Crown Vics. So,
The Marauders?
Well,
I thought they rode horses up there.
They might. Might get a little further
Mounties?
north. Yeah, well, that's how it started off. They'll still dress up for it, but do a whole meal deal. But
Have you ever been to the UK?
Huh?
You ever been to the UK?
No, if I travel somewhere, it's because of a drag and drive, or I'm here to do something like this.
Oh man,
I don't vacate. I don't go places. Like I'll go wander through. Like we're down here with the family, and the family's been going around doing all the sites, and I'm just here. It's like, what have you seen in Texas? What have you ate?
You gotta live life, man.
Well, you see, this car should be wired.
This life.
I used to think that too. I used to be just like that, and then I got to the realization that I'm never gonna retire.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So that's why I moved down there because now I can live like I'm retired.
Yeah, true.
I got to swim in the ocean before I got on a plane. Thank God I had able to rent off, but man, you got to get out and see because the car scene, like you think the car scene's pretty cool here, and there's some other places that the car scene is wicked.
Oh, I would love to do like Japan and that kind of stuff.
I want to go to Japan. I haven't done that one yet, but that's definitely going to be in the next year or two.
I want to do a podcast.
I want to do Brazil.
Brazil, you got to be a little careful.
Yeah, but it's
that's where Fuel Tech's at.
Yeah.
They're in Brazil.
We found that out on the podcast.
Yeah.
Titan.
Yeah, well, that's originally where they're from. I remember when Fuel Tech first came over, and there was the language barrier. It was the big thing.
Yeah.
In the early days, it was like, what? Okay.
What do they speak there?
Portuguese.
Portuguese, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Apparently, and I don't speak Portuguese.
So, all right. So back to the standalone stuff.
Yeah. So we got into the Holley.
What made you like the Holley more than the others? Like, what have you compared them to?
I like the Holley. Like, for example, going to Fuel Tech, you're kind of stuck in the constraints of what the engineers that made the firmware. It's like so basically like a Motec, you could change all the firmware to the firmware package that you want. You could edit everything so you can make it do what you want. Where the Holley, you can't change the firmware, but you have an exuberant amount of inputs and outputs and 2D and 1D tables that you can modify to do whatever you want.
Well, same thing with Motec.
Yeah, exactly. But you can edit it the whole way. But you can also do the firmware stuff to make it so it's all embedded in.
So my only thing that I would be, I guess there's a couple things, and I love Holley. I've used them for a long time, but I feel like they're catering to the people that, not us.
Oh yeah.
So
who?
So the people that get Terminators, because the Terminator's got all the new stuff. The Dominator has nothing.
Well, I think the reason
Terminator's
behind
the more
that is they
expensive
use the Terminator platform as the R&D. Because they
Right.
get a lot of stuff before
But-
they give it to the lower end, like the people that didn't spend as much money to R&D the software.
But the
And then
issue
move it
being,
in.
you put it in a plastic case
Yeah.
in a car that's rattling.
Yeah.
You wonder why they swap Terminator boxes like every couple passes almost. It's not stable. It's not gonna.
Most of
Any-
the Terminator stuff I've had, I haven't had a Terminator ECU fail yet.
Have you ever seen like the inside of a Pro EFI,
Yeah.
like the folded board and everything, and how sturdy everything is and rigid? and
It's the opposite of a Terminator.
it's literally, well, they're built for OE quality, right?
Yeah.
The Motecs are built on like an OE quality level, and then the Dominator's not a bad box. The HP is not a bad box, but the Terminator, it's literally the worst idea you could ever have in an ECU, and they put everything into it. And I get it's a cost cutting thing.
Yeah,
I'm not against that.
they're
Look,
trying
I'm a poor too.
Yeah, they're trying
Okay?
to cater to the sloppy generation. We're like, hey,
I get that, but like, there's guys out here that want something nice. Why not move some of that to the Dominator where we can actually log this stuff?
yeah.
Because you're logging over what the can expander, the little expansion thing
Well,
they
the
do,
little-
and the latency on that is
Well,
atrocious.
on the Terminator stuff.
Right.
But you get into a Dominator, you have so
But
many
we don't
inputs.
have all the modern stuff in the Dominator. See
True.
the issue?
Well, it depends. Yeah. Well, modern stuff, like you want to play with some of the drive-by-wire
timing.
stuff.
We want a proper cam and
Man.
crank sync. They don't do very good on that either.
Well, I guess depending on what you're trying to do with it.
Well, I mean, wouldn't you want to constantly update a cam and crank sync? Like the Motec is constantly monitored, constantly watching it, constantly adjusting for it.
Yeah, verifying timing.
So I'm thinking for like the stuff you do, the Coyote stuff, wouldn't that be more beneficial?
It probably would, but you got to pick
Tell
and choose
Boyd
what
it's
you can
time
do.
to stand up.
Oh man, I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to give away all my 2D tables we have in that thing. Like, because in the Holley stuff, we'll have simple, like a lot of, with the 2D table, basically you're limited by what you can think about and what you can actually plan out in your head. Like, I have a Explorer Sport Track with like a Raptor front end on it and everything, the 410 small block Ford with twin 67s on it. And that thing has front and rear steering position sensors on it. So we run, and it's 4-wheel hydraulic steering. So we'll set it up. It'll follow the front steering position sensor and work the table between the tables. It'll have below a certain drive shaft speed. It'll work the rear steer solenoids to match the front or whatever position we set it up at. A little bit less, a little bit not, to help with coming into a corner to help it turn around. Because it's a 4-doors Explorer Sport Track that we decided to build. It's a whole nother wild and crazy thing. I always get stuck in, I do this for a passion. I'm not a good businessman. If I was a good businessman, I'd be like, hey, this is all I build.
Most good tuners aren't good businessmen.
Yeah, it's like, hey, I want to do this because it's cool.
You're a good tuner?
I'm like, you talk to him, it's like, hey, we could do this, we could do that. And the whole time you're doing it, you don't realize until you get off the phone with the guy, it's like, man, I just added 4 days to this thing, and it's going to suck. But, when it's done, I'll be like, hey, you crack a beer, you look at it, it's like, pretty cool, huh?
Yeah. And like I said, I get all that. I think
It's what you're comfortable with.
I feel like if Holley would put more into the Dominator, or at least come out with another more rigid, reliable box.
Well, because they have stuff in the pipes. With the new hardware coming out, it's hard to say.
But it's not here.
Not yet. Yeah, we can only
Right.
pray.
Motec's been here forever.
Yes.
And I get it's expensive. Again, I don't have it.
Yeah.
I will eventually buy it, but I don't have it. But the cam and crank sync has always been
that'd be
one of the
nice.
biggest things for me, especially on a Coyote, because you can individually control the VCT with the Motec.
Yeah.
It's just like on the LT stuff, we can actually adjust that with the Motec properly, where the
Yeah,
factory
you
stuff
can
is kind
maximize
of, the factory stuff will adjust it until it decides it's going to just move around itself.
But then that's the other thing. Like in Coyote world, you're not controlling both cams. You're only controlling the intake cam if you do go that route, just because of back pressure and everything else going on in a turbo system that you just can't control the exhaust cam. And if the exhaust cam starts doing weird shit, like game over.
You can't control it just because
You can't.
of the pressure?
Well, just because of it's too. There's too much going on with like back pressure and because you're opening the exhaust valve on to a power pulse, so it's a lot harder to do it. It's like in conventional world, like in a big block Chevy, that you have a big turbo deal, you can run aluminum rockers on the intake side. You can't get away with running an aluminum rocker on the exhaust side. You're going to break it.
Right.
Just because
pressure.
the opening pressure is just so high. And then you also have everything else going on. You have big back pressure trying to open the valve and everything else going on, and heat. It's just a wild deal.
The
So
same
when
thing
you,
on the BMWs, the B58s, they have to lock out the exhaust cam too now.
yeah, it's just what it is. Like you see guys, like a lot of the big guys with Motex, they'll have the exhaust cams locked out and just run in variable intake cam.
But that's an advantage, right?
To a point. Like things are only an advantage.
Now take this from, I'm not saying that I know. I'm asking.
But you're giving you one more parameter to help you achieve a task. If it's great if you have it and you spend the time to maximize it. But if you're being a guy that just has it for the sake of having it, doesn't do it.
But if you had it to also have DI control, because I know you said that the DI doesn't help as much, but I can tell you from experience on a ZL1 that was a turbo car.
The GM DI world's different than the Ford world.
But what's different is DI's DI, right?
Well, the technology behind it, because Ford never jumped full, like with the Coyote platform, didn't jump full into the DI. They relied on the port.
I wonder if the only reason I'm saying so ZL1 big turbo, get it up on boost.
Yeah.
It had a 400 in it, no problem. It would instantly light off.
Oh yeah.
They had the bright idea to pull the DI and put it on fully port. And we had to add nitrous to the car to get the turbo to come back on because it would not come back on because of how low the efficiency was. Yeah. Well, so if you could add that to the Coyote world to where you could add some efficient DI, right, to kind of broaden that power curve, couldn't that help?
More than likely, but I think in the Coyote where the problems they are having troubles with DI injector failures in the big power stuff. And they started deleting them because of that.
Oh, okay.
Because that's where I say the tech's not there because they didn't jump full.
Because like the Huracan, the V10s, the RS3s, they run dual as well.
Yeah.
And they don't block it when they're making 3,000 horsepower.
Yeah, it's just the technology is like the injector tech is better and more robust to say than the Coyote.
Now the Lambo stuff's not that great. It's been going through some issues.
Yeah.
But it's getting there.
Teething.
Yeah. So I guess that's what it is. So Coyote doesn't really, and again, just so we're clear, I don't tune Coyote. I don't know enough about it. So I'm just speaking from what I've seen and trying to learn from what you're saying.
Yeah, it's the thing. It's like you can have a full cabinet of tools. The tools are only as good as the person using it. Like if you get into I do a lot of Honda stuff like the K24 stuff. And you have all the VTEC and those things. So and the variable cam timing, yada yada yada. So you get into it. A lot of guys will just put the preset VCT map in and just run it. But that's not the right way to do it. You got to log that. You put the cams in one position, you make a dyno pull. You do another position, do a dyno pull. Another position, do a dyno pull. Then you take your dyno sheets, you put them all on top,
and you see.
And then you can overlay. This is the best position for this RPM. This is the best for this. This is the best for this. And then you can do it all. Like it's probably going to take you all day to do it right, but then when you do it right, it works. Mm-hmm. Like it's going to be that much better than the other guy. And then you explain it to a customer, and he's like, "Oh yeah, do it," or the customer say, no, don't do it. And then I'll do it anyways and just lose my ass on it. Because I can't put it out there and then he's going to go to so-and-so and be like, oh, yeah, Merkl tuned this and it's not that product. And that's why you lose your ass. And tuners are bad businessmen. You don't want to put something out that somebody can show to another guy and another guys can pick it apart.
That's something I recently dealt with actually last week was a lot of guys. So you have like a big shop, right? Mm-hmm. And they have their own in-house tuner. Sometimes the tuner is the owner. Those shops, not anybody in particular, but they struggle with newer things as they're coming. Yeah. So, but a lot of them don't want to ask for help. Mm-hmm. A lot of them do. So they'll have like a guy like me that'll remote in for them. And sometimes people are like, oh, well, why did they have to use him? And what I try to explain to people is, this is all I do.
It's efficiency.
Right? So I get the vibe from you that you do a lot like me. So if I want to perfect a platform, I'll spend a solid week on a dyno adjusting 3 parameters.
Yeah, and then
just to see what I can get out of it, and then I'll move to the next one. And I can spend that time because it's an investment towards me.
Exactly.
So you have that where you can do that.
Yeah.
These guys, these shops, they can't do that because the shop can't run the shop, tune the cars, and spend that kind of time on something and find all these little things where we can.
Yeah, exactly.
So
And
it's a
like,
very unique advantage.
I'm really fortunate where I'm at with doing everything. I have all the machining equipment and everything to do it. Like I can put something on dyno, play with it all day, and I'm like, hey, I want to try something, pull it back apart, tweak this, tweak that, put it back together in a controlled environment, the dyno in-house and everything. I'm not dealing with renting a dyno or having to schedule everything, and then something goes wrong and it screws up 2 people's schedules. Like
Right.
they're out of dyno, like their guy's sitting there that was supposed to run the dyno for the day.
Well, and you
No,
can
you
go
said
to the
the
track
12
and test this stuff too,
Exactly.
where a lot of times the shop owner can't do that.
Well, and then you get my biggest pet peeve of remote tuning is always startup. Like you're trying to get cold start and everything set up. You can't, like, to do that remote. Like you basically got to tell the guys like, hey, these are what you got to do. Like go out there, start it, try this, move it this way. Start it, try this, move it this way, and then if it's warmed up a bunch, let it cool. Try it again with what you think is best. Is it better or worse?
Yeah.
And then do that through the whole coolant temp. Like nothing. Like you go into stuff and people go crank on stuff and it starts and barely starts or blah, 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 blah. No, you should be able to reach in from the outside, go and it light off. If it doesn't, well, if it doesn't bug you, cool, you're happy with it. Like it's not saying that the guy's doing it wrong. It's just if you're happy with the product, cool.
Well, the benefit of like a standalone is at least you don't have things working against you.
Yeah.
So in the Gen 5 stuff, what we got now, thanks to the EPA, cat warm up.
Oh yeah.
And they took the table away. So you'll go
Well,
to
you can't
fire
even
off a
touch it.
Gen 5 and it's just negative timing. And if it's like a built setup, it's popping and going crazy. And then 30 seconds, boom, it goes to idle and perfect. And it's like, so do you try to fight against that? Or do you just deal with it now? Where in the standalone stuff, it's kind of nice because you can just,
You're open.
it does what you say instead of what you suggest.
Exactly. You're not having to go around like, why did this thing close the throttle on me? Like,
Right.
what torque table did I run into now? What's this background thing? Like,
Yeah.
torque tables, like it's one of those things. Like I remember back when I started doing like the Focus RSs, doing the 2.3 EcoBoost and that thing, and go take it out and like on the dyno, it's like, oh well, torque. We hit a torque table here. We hit this limiting factor. We hit optimal stability control. We hit this. We hit that. It's like, man, you spend like 10 pulls, like you get rid of one thing and you run into another thing. You get rid of another thing and like you finally make a good pull. It's like, thank God.
Yeah.
Going back to the Motec, it sounds like to me that, do you think Motec is like overkill for some cars? Or
Nothing's overkill if you use it.
well, yeah, but you're saying
Like
that
you
you
could
kind
be
of
rolling
don't.
around a 200 wheel Honda Civic, and if you're utilizing everything, it's a whole tool thing. If you're utilizing everything that you have, sure, be same guy be rolling around in like a micro squirt, and it might do this. Well, get him to and from work, and he'll go out there and make a wide open pull, put a smile on his face. Does he know that it's down like 20 wheel or 30 wheel where it could perfectly be? No, you don't notice that, but
You're also talking to a guy that has a steering position sensor.
Yeah.
I'm a
Wired
data
in.
Nazi. Like when you look at Boyd's car that we're doing right now, that thing, we have everything. We have onboard weather station, we have steering position sensor, we got back pressure sensors, we got pre-intercooler temp and pressure sensors.
And soon to have turbine input.
Oh God, I wish. I wish we had speed on that thing, but that'll be a talk for another day.
How do you like the guys that put a Dominator on a car and they don't wire up any extra sensors? Do you deal with that? I deal with that all the time.
Yeah. Or 102.
They'll get
they put 102 on it. It's like, well, the other one's so expensive. Like, God dang.
they'll put they do like a Dominator for port control, right, for the Gen 5 and nothing else. I'm like, so you just spent $9,000 for something an $800 box could have did.
Yeah.
They don't use any of the other inputs or outputs. And I'm like, what is wrong with you people? It drives me nuts because there's so much capability with that box.
Well, exactly. They showed up and they bought the biggest toolbox off Snap-on and told them to fill it. And they go in there just
Harbor Freight.
just to grab a freaking ball peen hammer to go smash nails in somewhere.
Yeah.
It's like, bud.
But that's something I see a lot of. They'll buy the better controller and then they won't utilize any of it. Or my favorite is they won't use the Holley harness and they'll pin in some Harbor Freight wire. Not Harbor Freight, AutoZone, wherever you got it from.
Your generic parts store.
Speaker
Right,
wire.
right. You laugh. I've seen a drive shaft speed sensor with speaker wire.
I've seen extension cords used.
Nah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Like for
Yeah,
real.
for real. Like they took an outdoor extension cord, cut the ends off because it's 3-wire.
I wonder if people realize that the wire's different.
Oh, people don't understand.
I've
They
had
don't
a guy.
understand the wire size, the strand size.
That's crazy. The craziest thing I've seen
E-Wish shit.
was what is it called? The stuff you pull through the walls, Romex. I've seen Romex used before, and I'm like, that's solid wire. You don't use
the
that.
wire nuts they used on that used on.
Yeah, a solid wire.
Not stranded. Damn.
It was like a real thin Romex, and I'm like,
Oh man.
what the hell are you doing? He's like, well, it was easy to run.
Yeah, of course it would be.
It doesn't fucking kink as much.
I was
It'd be
like,
the same guy that'll push that stuff through some ray cam because it was super easy to push through the shit.
You know the
ray
shitty
cam.
part is his car was fast as fuck.
Hey,
It was.
sometimes it works.
He used garden hose for the heater hoses and for the intercooler piping, and it was the jankiest thing I've ever seen run 8s.
You don't have to be pretty to go fast.
Like I'm sure he's not alive today because I'm sure that car caught on fire and he died in it, but
God damn.
he's probably alive. But
Yeah. But,
Yeah.
but sometimes
Okay.
I get it. Like sometimes you're in a pinch. You got to do what you got to do. Like that's the thing in the drag and drive world. You got to do what you got to do. Like I remember the first drag and drive we went on. There was a guy with it was like an aluminum Land Rover body, and he had a small block Dodge in that thing. We were driving. We made it like 50 miles out of the first track, and the thing broke a tip of like the cup off the push rod because they have a cup and ball style rocker, and it smashed that off. And I'm like, oh, we're done. Blah blah blah. I'm like, dude, no, we got this. Go to the toolkit and find like a 9/30 seconds 12-point quarter-inch socket. Get that, like go to the 12-point, take a drill in it, knock the points off the 12-point, then go to the backside of the quarter-inch, drill it out to go on the push rod, and we fucking green Loctited that thing on, hammered it on, got the height right, set it up. He drove it 400 miles the next track, ran the next day on it until he could get a set of push rods for it.
this is what I'm
Like
talking
David
about.
Freiberger
When
came over, he's like, oh, I want to see this, and like, you know what? That socket, whatever it was, a Husky or whatever it was, that thing was not broken when we took it out. It was impressive.
That's what I say when these drag and drive guys are built different. That's built different.
Yeah.
That's
We-
wild.
How do you build like a drag and drive car?
Drag and drive car, it's kind of a weird world. You're building a car that's got to do a lot of stuff, but not everything. Basically, it's like you build a car, its potential's this. And you basically you tone it back. Every car that goes and makes passes, they go super fast. Like there's some exceptions. There's guys that have it sorted out, like Brett and those guys. But
Jeff.
they'll go, huh? Jeff Lutz. But like, again, if he took the car out, took it to a track, and was able to lean on it hard, he's going to run faster than they would on a normal drag and drive day. A lot of the guys have stuff turned back, or drag and drive guys we're notorious for like the thing hasn't ran yet and it shows up. The event is when you're finishing it. Like I've had customers, we show up day 1 or day 0 for test day, and we're wiring the lights in this thing because hasn't been done yet. We're finishing the build in the pits, and it kills me because I'm like a guy that likes to have everything. Like
you did
T-Scrolls.
Sick Week. They had a convertible Fox body
Yeah, Devin Vanderhoof.
that he had it turned down
Yeah,
to run low force.
yeah, because he was running the 8.5 class.
He turned it down to run low. I'm like,
He's a bad motherfucker.
that was wild.
Yeah, well, he's a bad dude with that. But like, so that was the same year we went. And
Yeah.
like we got there again. Like the drag and drive guys are bad for some of it. I had a customer I went with his car, greatest dude. He doesn't look at logs. He doesn't pay attention to some of the stuff. And like I built the Coyote I built for him. We built it in 2018 or 17. It was a Gen 2 deal, stock sleeve with sleeve supports. And it lived great. Like it was on 34 pounds all the time. We never had a sleeve failure. But when we took it apart, like you could see, you go to hone it and you can see where the block spot be cracked out behind it because you can see where the hone didn't touch in the sleeves. Like stuff's moving around, but it lived. But we got down there, unload the thing. We just put the C6 in it with the modular adapter bell. We unloaded it at the pad, broke the drive shaft on it instantly. Like, sweet. The car didn't, like, he did a big burnout, put it on the brake, let go of the brake instantly, like the car didn't roll. Like you get that 6-inch death roll or something. It didn't move. So
Jeez.
my boy, headers only down there, he hooked us up with his guy, got a drive shaft built. Like by the time we drove to the place an hour and a half away in Belrose?
Belrose, yep.
Yeah. We rolled in there. He had everything chucked up in it. He wanted me to verify length before we welded it out. Put that thing in there, and we're good to go. And we rolled in to Florida, unloaded in Orlando, started driving it around. We're like, get it good and hot. I'm like, looking at the oil pressure. I'm like, man, how much oil pressure this thing usually got when it's hot? He's like, I don't know, never looked. I was like, oh, God. And like, it's got 12 pounds of oil pressure. I'm like, sweet.
Who was it did the drive shaft?
Huh? Oh, man, it was a truck shop. I can't remember, but I have it on my phone somewhere, but they were minty.
Yeah.
And also, like, he also had the one guy he quickly tacked on, because I wasn't allowed to use the welder, because like I understood, like it's their tools, it's their ass for like to MIG weld an anti-roll bar bracket on, because the anti-roll bar hadn't been cleaned out and the bushings, everything was locked up solid. So you drive it on the street, it blow the bolts out of the anti-roll bar links all the time.
Oh man.
So it was just irritating. And the guy was kind of bad for not checking it. So it'd go out and the thing would like this 4 times. And he's the guy who's like, I'm going to make the lick. He'll ride it out like a bull like 4 or 5 times down the track, and it just looks hilarious. But so we did that, and we ran the car, and it was like getting worse and worse. So we went and got some Lucas HD stabilizer, and we just kept adding that. And I'm like, oh, it's not as bad now. Like, we got to a point, it's like, man, we need to just do bearings in this thing. So after we finished SGMP, we went and got bearings. Had a good guy hook up Jordan at Modular Head Shop. He brought me some main bearings, rod bearings, and we, in Gainesville, in a parking lot of a hotel, I did rods and mains on this thing and thrust bearings. Made it to the track in Gainesville. We never missed anything. We made our pass. We were back in Orlando by 10 p.m. Like, not many people are going to be hardcore enough to do bearings on a Coyote deal.
No,
But I'm dumb.
That's that drag and drop mentality. They're like,
We're
oh,
dumb.
you know what I need to do? I need to whittle a new block out of that aluminum I just found over there. And they'll go back and make a pass with it.
It's like I talked about my Big Tire Fox. I want to do drag and drive so bad, but I want to be the guy. If I do it, like, I'm stupid that way, and I'm also a nitrous guy on that thing, so I'm real stupid. Like, if I'm going, I'm bringing a generator, I'm bringing the boring bar, I'm going to bring in 10 sleeves and probably 12 slugs, because I'm going to melt one out of it all the time. And guarantee you'll find me in some convenience store or gas station, let me use a plug-in so I can use the boring bar. And I'll be boring the goddamn block, because I'm stupid that way. I enjoy that. I enjoy it's like a challenge. You get that competitor's like, oh yeah, nobody else would do this. I'm going to do it. And then you're like, I'm stupid.
I seen Jeff Lutz boring some shit out on the side of the road. I'm like, God damn.
Yeah.
Fucking crazy ass.
2018, I went with a customer with a Dart, and we ended up actually winning, was it Ultimate Iron that year? But I think it was Wednesday, we left the track. I was like, man, what's that sound? Like, it sounds like it's making some noise. He's like, oh, we'll be good. He was in a big rush to try and make it to the next track. I'm like, man, we got to pull over. And then one of the guys we were with, he had serious problems. We pulled over. I'm like, hey, let's run the valves, check it out. And we realized it beat the piss out of a lifter. So we're having to actually push the lifter down and grind it, because it spread the lifter body. So we have to grind the lifter body in the motor to get the lifter back out without damaging the lifter bore, and change the lifters out on this thing and get back rolling. And then, like, you do all kinds of stuff, drag and drives. I remember Richard Guido, I had a buddy, Richard Guido, and like a lot of dragon guys know, he's like the Canadian Truck Norris. He's got a GT, like a 67, I think, GTO with a big 500 and something cubic inch Pontiac with, I think it's a 94 mil on it and a stick. And he just beats the thing senseless. But I remember we were at a way too fancy of a hotel for this, like on a lake up in Michigan or something. And we were doing lifters in this thing, and they didn't have the oil groove grounded in the lifter bodies. So he went to Walmart, got like an 1/8-inch Dremel with a little cutoff wheel. So I'm in this fancy bathroom grinding oil grooves in all the lifters.
Jeez.
And we go back. I was like, here, they're good to go. Like, I blew them out and we're good to go. Blew them out with a hairdryer, so let's go. And put it all back together and worked good. But
when you said you had to go test at the pad, is that where he was from?
no, the customer, we drove down from Canada. Like, by the time we hit.
So you were going to Orlando. Oh,
Well,
you had to start.
Yeah, well, we would stop to the pad to just test it, and one of my good customers, like, I hadn't met him in person. I remoted with him for years. We went and hung out with him, had supper and stuff, and then we were like, hey,
Yeah.
like, this is my bucket list thing. Let's
He
go to
races at the pad a lot.
Louisiana?
Allegedly.
Headers only?
Allegedly, he's raced at the pad.
Well, on Forza.
Yeah, he's kind of, I like to call headers. He's like I almost like to call him kind of the Clark Kent, kind of Bruce Wayne kind of good deal. He's almost got two identities. Like, by day, he's like a HVAC tycoon, and by night, he's like a grudge racer guy. And you see him, you wouldn't get it. Like a polo shirt on and some beige khaki shorts on. You're like, and then you hear him start talking. It's like, oh, he's who got me hooked up with Boyd and Manuel and those guys, and it's kind of got spread through kind of the grudge scene and some other guys.
How'd you like the pad?
Oh, dude.
Did you go to NASA?
Huh?
Did you go to NASA?
NASA.
It's another spot out there.
No, we didn't go there. We unloaded the car at the pad and destroyed the drive shaft. So
Oh yeah, sure.
we're kind of like, hey, we need to fix this.
Of all the places you've been, it's a rowdy street, isn't it?
Oh, it's like I got out there. I'm like, man, this is after I sprayed it. I'm like, this is better than our local stuff.
A lot of places, a lot of people claim, they got the best street, they got the best that. That street is better than 90% of the tracks I've been to.
Like this is
That street is unbelievable.
Well, for like 150, 200 foot, it's
That's
really
all that matters,
good.
man.
Yeah, you can't have the same mentality that a lot of guys have, which doesn't usually work out. Guys, they want to go super slow, and turn the power on up top, and you see them do the.
No, you got to get out and then calm it
can-
down out back, or you're going in the canal.
Yeah, you got to make up. You got to make up a lot of ground real early. And it's super. That first 100 foot, that's win or loss.
But that first 100 foot down there, it's unbelievable. I mean, they go down, they scrape it, like
it's wild.
It's maintained.
I've heard it's gotten tightened up a lot more with some of the new enforcement down there. It hasn't been as good.
The management.
Yeah, the
BJ?
management of the tracks have been pretty bad there.
BJ, the manager.
Well, no, BJ hasn't been bad, but there's some.
No,
other
BJ,
outside-
man, BJ's been he's been
He's a good
since
dude.
I went out there when I was a kid. BJ was out there.
Yeah.
I remember one time allegedly this happened in a dream. We were out there on street bikes, and they were coming racing over the hill, and we're sitting on the side of the road, and as soon as you see the cars coming that were supposed to make the hit, 2 police cars come out and blocked us all off, and I wasn't getting to my bike in time. BJ, literally one hand on the bike, one hand trying to block a taser, and gone, no problem.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
He's wild.
Oh.
No, but
In your dream? In your dream?
I got my drink.
yeah, his dreams
In
are
your
wild.
dream?
In my drink, yeah.
Some of the stuff that happens in your dreams is just wild. People wouldn't even believe it.
Well, he would never do that. He doesn't even go out there.
No, like
He's got a stunt double now.
I think it's JB or whatever his name is.
Yeah.
That rolls out there now. But yeah, no, it's an interesting world.
It's just a different place.
Oh.
It's really cool.
You get there and like you start realizing like if you grew up, some people, depending on what generation, like you grew up watching a lot of the videos from that, like before all the street outlaw stuff, like when it was real, they could get away with a lot more stuff before there was that big a spotlight on it.
Yeah.
That was one of those things, like the whole street outlaw thing, it did really good for the car community, but it kind of killed a lot of the street race community. Because you get a lot of people that they want to be like the guys on TV and street race, but they're not really about that life. Like it's to be about
A
that
lot of
life.
people
is
don't
different.
realize. Then again, we talked about this before. When they came to film Street Outlaws in New Orleans, they had filmed at my shop down there. And then we went out. It was Kai Kelly, Davis Mangum, a bunch of those guys, and they beat all of them.
Yeah.
And they didn't film that up. They didn't show that episode at all.
Well, that doesn't look good.
But
on there.
then again, there came New Orleans Street Outlaws. I mean, it's all Mississippi guys, but New Orleans Street Outlaws.
Yeah.
But
Figure that out.
I guess that came from when they came down there. They didn't realize those guys were that fast.
Yeah.
But they live for that. That down there is a business. It's 100% a business.
Oh yeah. It's wild how some people they can almost make a living grudge and street racing. You get guys that travel all around the country and doing that stuff, but you're built different for that.
Yeah.
Like when you like, hey,
Well, it's got to take a lot of brain. You got to think when they're making these bets and things like this. Like they're banking on every single aspect of what the car's going to do based on what they've seen and
there's the whole other game to it. It's not just making sure you're the faster guy. Like there's
No,
the game
it's the
leading up
hustle.
to it. You gotta hustle the guy into some stuff.
yeah.
It's like you watch guys who be like, oh yeah, on my 6.0 car. I'm like, this ain't no 6.0.
They used to hustle everybody with a Tundra. I don't know why it was so fast, but they had a Tundra out there and just look like a regular stock Tundra. And he'd go out there and he'd race a bunch of people and it'd be real close. And then somebody fast would pipe up and, I'll shut him down. And all of a sudden the Tundra still beat him.
Yeah. It's one of those things. That car beat every car by a car or a fender.
Candy Coupe. Have you ever heard of that guy?
I have not.
He worked at a dealership. I forget his name now. He had a candy red Fox body. And it didn't matter if it was a pickup truck or an 8-second street car. He beat every single car by a bumper.
And
Every car. It didn't matter what it was. You could be in a 15-second truck and he's right here.
And those guys that do that, like, they're the drivers, because people don't realize how much like speed management like that to do that, how hard that is.
Well, I try to tell these guys, like the NA grudge game, NA Camaro grudge game, it's huge. But all these guys want to go out, build their car, and they've got a really good setup. And they're like, well, I want to go run Jarvis. I'm like, so you want to go run the guy that's beating everyone, but you want to make money grudge racing this car. Doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Yeah. As much
like,
as you
that
want
guy's coming prepared. I tell people that all the time. I'm like, Jarvis, he's on top of that. He's one of the only grudge racers I would say that is very focused on making sure he doesn't lose. And he'll always go the whatever distance he needs to, from what I've seen, and I can respect that.
Oh, yeah.
But everybody wants to swing for that first. It's like if you just manage that a little bit, just beat everybody by a little bit.
It's the hustle. Like, you don't go out and race the fastest guy first, because if you beat the fastest guy first, you're not going to get any races.
That's how they do it at the pad. They're smart like that. Everybody thinks, oh, it's just a bunch of dudes hanging out. I'm like, yeah, I don't understand. Those dudes are smart. Yeah. BJ and all those guys, they've been doing that so long. They know the game.
You just walked into their office.
Huh?
You just walked into their office.
That's what I'm saying.
Walked into school, and you're about to get schooled.
Yeah, they made that game out there. They built that whole deal. You go out there, you're in their world, and you better be ready.
Oh yeah, it's wild.
How's it like I know you're speaking about like, Louisiana, Florida, sick week. How's it like in Canada? Like, how's the car scene, the racing scene out there?
We don't have near the population you guys do. Like, so for example, like Houston, there's more people in Houston than our whole province by far.
There's more people in Houston probably than all of Canada.
Well, nah, you get out east. There's quite a
It's
few.
very close.
It's probably
I'll bet
close.
it's close.
Because I think the airport I flew out of, Calgary, was like 1.7 million, and it's like I think it's the biggest city in Alberta. And there's not. And then I'm fortunate enough to live in like a little small city, and like my shop is a 5-minute drive from my house. Like, I'm on the outskirts of town. I can just rip over the house, so it's not so bad to run back and see the kids, have supper, and then go back and work some more. But, with sparse population, there's roads that there's not people on. But the roads that we have, they're not anything it's bad. Like, it's all tar strips. And it's always dirty because of all the farming fields around. So there's always dust on the roads. It's interesting. So you develop some stuff that allegedly might make passes on those roads, and you got to get creative. Like, there's a car that I partake in that's like a 69 Camaro. It's big tire deal, the 400 and something cubic inch conventional small block Chevy, but with like an 8-liter Whipple on it, and big heat exchanger, Holley EFI. So we utilize all the traction control we can. But that's a car that's a Terminator. It's a Terminator X ECU in it. It's been great when we use that with that thing, and it's been wild. You can pull out there and turn the traction control on. Don't do a burnout. Just get on the chip, let go of the button. Thing shifts itself. You roll through the big end. It's all good. But it's one of those cars where the whole chassis it was an old like 90s Pro Street car that was meant to go out of the trailer, in there, change the plugs, fire it up into the car show. Then you can put it back in the trailer after the car show, and that's like all the car did. So what we're doing is like it's gonna get a serious overhaul this winter here. I got to do a whole new chassis for it, and so on and so forth, to make it legal for some of the classes, some of the airport no prep races that we do with it, and some of the other stuff, so we can get it to where I know it's capable of going.
Do you do the chassis work?
Yes, I do all the chassis fabrication, all of the hot side, cold sides, all the turbo
You
kits.
weld them straight, right?
Huh?
You weld them straight.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Make sure they're straight. I've seen some stuff
Yeah.
where people don't realize when you do like mega truck stuff, where you have nitrogen shocks and they mount the shock hoops differently, so the shocks are a different angle. Like, you realize changing that angle, you change the spring rate of that shock. Mm-hmm. Like, there's physics going on here. It's not that
there's a lot going in a chassis that a lot of people don't factor in.
Like, you start looking at some of the stuff when people are trying things. Some of the earlier pro mods and stuff where they had, kind of when they were doing double frame rail stuff, and they started going into some of the sports going up the front struts. They would start pinning those things so you could. It's a real crappy track. They would unpin it to make the chassis a little bit more flexible. You pin it when you're on a tight track, and it would help it. Bolt it back together, and there's all the little things you would do Like the stuff that when you build something and then after you're all done, you test it, it's like, oh, well, we got to start over because now we know how to do it better.
Yeah. Well, that's
what-
always going to be like that, though.
And then you're the guy that it's like, oh, I'm going to do it better. I'm going to do it better. I'm going to do it better. So you keep putting it off and it just doesn't get done. Or you get guys that go out and they buy a whole combination because they want to get on it. They don't realize that, hey, you can't build a car like that. If you want to build a chassis and everything and you want to have the best turbos and everything, like you buy turbos today and the car's not going to be done for a year and a half. Those turbos aren't the best anymore. The wheel technology is climbing every single day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like
yeah,
you really-
those next-gen turbos are like a whole nother animal compared to what they were before.
Yeah.
But-
you get all the guys that were doing like the smaller shops, like you get like forced inductions or Hearts and was it CRP and all those other guys that are heavy into the X275 world where they're trying to find every little thing they can, that gray area.
Do you deal with forced induction a lot?
Yes, I've got quite a few cars with forced induction.
That's
stuff
who
on
I
it.
used for the turbos on my CTSV, and that dude's
They
pretty
bad.
cool, man.
They bad.
We had some, I think it was just Borg Warner turbos at the time, so he made his own turbo for us, and that's where I got the record with the 6L90, and the blue CTSV was from him, and then Texas 2K was coming around, and they had a limit on the turbo size. So he made a custom inlet compressor wheel.
he
So
made a
I fit the
legal
rules
turbos.
because the forced inductions I had, I mean, they were lightning. They were fast, and you know, sometimes you got to try different things. We tried the Zonas. They're good. They're not a bad turbo. And the way the compressor wheel, where they chop out every other fin on the compressor, so it has less restriction.
And turbulency.
But they light off fast, so I haven't been able to push them though. So, but I remember I was headed to Maryland, and I called him up and I said, "Hey man, I need to get these turbos. I'm gonna go to Maryland. I'm leaving. I think I was in Louisiana at the time, and he had them set outside of his shop. I was able to just stop by. I think it was in Alabama. Stop by, grab them, and put them on the car in the parking lot in Maryland.
Yeah. Well,
So it's just cool when you have a turbo manufacturer that will do certain things just to make sure you have what you need.
you can bounce some ideas off, and he'll
Yeah.
get you something.
Yeah.
You tell him, hey, that's what I want to do, and he'll be like, I got you.
Yeah, I felt like working with him, you didn't have to worry so much about the newer stuff coming out because he was kind of ahead of that curve.
Yeah, like it had some, like a lot of the guys like him, they'll have the turbos come out, and like some companies will, they'll cheat. They'll have like a buddy's got a turbo and they'll take it to his buddy that owns a turbo company and they'll scan it and copy the wheel, and like then the buddy will, like the one guy will feel bad that owns a turbo and tell the company like, oh, don't worry about that. Like we've had 2 wheels since then.
Yeah.
Like, even if he copies it, he's still behind.
Yeah, I remember when I was messing with the comp stuff, I had an issue with the wheel exploding.
Oh.
Yeah, the oilless stuff, which on the smaller
that's an
ones I
issue.
never had an issue. It was the bigger ones, 67s. That when we were speaking earlier, I went to Oklahoma, blew a wheel up. It was the turbine wheel would explode. So I had taken one and I took the pieces and I sent it to him and I was like, man, you have a metallurgy guy, so you could see the air. Not send it to him, sorry, not the forced induction, to a metallurgy guy here, and you could see the air in the wheel. And I was talking to the guy at forced induction. He's like, it's just the cast process that, he was working on a wheel that would have been, I think it's the G2 wheel or something they call it now, but he was working on making sure that the wheel was better. It seemed like these guys rushed into it. And I'm sure Comp has fixed it since then because Justin Keith had him blow up on his car. George Benson had him blow up on his car. So it seems like the forced induction guy goes a little extra to make sure that it's going to live.
Yeah. Just to put more effort into it and put a name on it. And
Yeah.
not so much like pumping stuff out, might not make as much money on it, but that's the product level type thing
Yeah.
in the specialty world. But like, and sometimes you get into like cheaper stuff, like a lot of guys that don't have the budget for the good stuff like that. Like there's a lot of cheap companies where you can get away with it. Like I've personally had really good luck with a lot of VS racing stuff.
VS
We use it
racing?
on a lot
I
of
was about to say VS racing.
like,
I'll be honest, as much as people talk bad about them and stuff like that,
man,
I don't think I've ever had one fail.
yeah. Like
Make
I'm
I've
not
Power
saying
too.
they don't.
I've had
can't.
one fail.
They make
but
power too.
I've had one fail, but I know the reason why I failed. It was nothing to do with the turbo. It's because we probably stashed that thing full of bearing material when we had
Yeah.
like a little, SBLS life. You have some issues.
Yeah, that'll definitely stop one up.
Yeah, like when they don't have oil, they don't work that well. And then we noticed it in the logs when we were making tugs on it. It's like, man, like, wow, on this dome before, this thing was making 27 pounds. And like last pass it made 27. Now it's making 22. We make another pass, it makes 27. It's like, what's going on here? Like, look at it. It's like, oh yeah, that wheel's touching down pretty hard. It's pretty hard to make boost when the thing touches.
See, tell Boyd if they have shaft speed sensors, you'll see it first.
Yeah.
So what don't you do?
I won't paint. Won't do painting.
But you said already that you painted a car.
Yeah, I did. That was personal car. Well, that was the other thing. Like when I've done some cars when I do the whole front tube work. Like that's an exception. I'll do the paint and primer on like firewall forward when you do the whole tube front and everything on it, and do that and the chassis stuff. But like, man, the body work, the mess it makes, you have to have basically a shop dedicated to the body work because
It messes the whole shop up.
Yeah, you'll trash everything. You'll be like, oh, it's fine. Like that's good. It's like no, you're gonna spend more time than you spent on the body work cleaning up afterwards. It's just not worth it. But and then we start.
When you're building these cars and you're doing the wiring and the whole harness for it, where do you think people struggle in as far as electrical on the car?
A lot following instructions. When you buy a product from somebody, they're engineers, they say, ground this thing to the battery for a reason. People don't realize like that battery is a really good noise filter. It'll kill all kinds of noise. And then grounding, you have coils, you have anything that's a solenoid or a motor, it goes to a chassis because that's a noisy ground side. Don't put that stuff to a battery. You stack that stuff on top of other things, you're just going to put so much noise into everything else and make your life miserable.
Because they don't realize the battery is kind of like a buffer.
Yeah, it's
for that.
It's
even though it's in the directions in bold, italic, and underlined on Holley's thing. First thing says, make sure the power and ground goes straight to the battery.
Yeah.
People still don't do it. I see them all the time under the hood, tied to the alternator.
Yeah.
I've seen that.
dude.
I've seen power to the alternator. I was like,
Man, this is
not tuning that.
You saying this thing started and ran? Like, good on you, bud.
Yeah. Like, you're already winning.
Like, you try to explain to some people, and like simple things like having a dedicated. People got to realize you got to think of power, like 12-volt systems as like a river. So you have so much water, like so much current flowing through. So you're on a starter. You put a 2-gauge cable to power the starter. All of that's got to go somewhere through a negative side. So if you have a car with a long crank time, you don't have a dedicated ground from the battery to the engine block. It's like there's a good time. Sometimes you'll have a 12-second crank. Thing won't sync. You hook up a battery ground to that thing, battery to the motor. Oh, it's like all of a sudden this thing fires right up.
That's something I see a lot of. They'll put in something aftermarket, right? And they'll put a nice big fat power wire and then a little skinny ground. And I'm like, you realize what came in has to go out. I guess they think maybe that
It's nothing.
it uses the power and the power goes nowhere.
It's magic.
Yeah, but no, you got to have it. It's a two-way street here.
It is. I became such a absolute ground like.
The other thing, it really is about like wire gauging. People when they fuse stuff, I've noticed a lot of people won't actually test the circuit and do the 1.5 times to fuse and things like that. Which basically, if something takes 5 amps to run, you would put a 7.5 amp fuse 1.5 times. I'm not great at math. I hope that's right. Somebody will get me on that.
Yeah.
As simple as like looking into the instructions that will say like this is the amperage that this product draws. Like this is what we recommend for this. We recommend this wire size. When it says, hey, this fan works best, say like a ZL1 fan, like that brushless fan. If you try to hook that thing up and put like, say like a 14 gauge wire to those like the 6 gauge wires on that ZL1 brushless fan, it is not gonna work. Like you're gonna have some serious issues.
Well, the bigger issue is it will work and the wire will get hot.
Yeah.
And what people don't understand is when the wire gets hot, the resistance goes up. When the resistance goes
hotter
up,
and
it gets hotter and hotter and hotter, and then the wire melts.
And then the product doesn't work like it's supposed to.
Well, of course, yeah, because it can't flow the amperage.
And then so-and-so gets online on Facebook, tells all his other buddies, oh, this product's trash. This product's trash. This water pump's trash. This fan sucks. This fuel pump sucks.
Not only that, 14 gauge isn't 14 gauge.
Yeah.
Like 14 gauge from AutoZone versus 14 gauge in a TXL versus 14 gauge in a Tefzel mil-spec style wire is a big difference.
Oh, got you.
14 gauge in a mil-spec wire will flow probably 3 times the amount of amps that a 14 gauge AutoZone wire will.
Yeah.
That's what people don't realize is there's things like tinned and cross-link wire that will flow things significantly better with less resistance, which means less heat. So especially when you're dealing with signals and stuff, you really want a good cross-link wire, and it kind of tries to help keep that interference from going out. But shielding things, that's something people don't know, or they'll ground both ends of the shield.
Yeah, you just created
And
a
I'm
ground
like,
loop.
you just made a ground. With a shield, you'll ground, you'll run it along, and then it stays open on the other end. That way, any EFI that comes out will go into that shield and ground itself into the computer. If I'm wrong, that's okay.
Yeah. Hey, that's what I go
Comment
by,
down below
and
if
it's
he's
worked.
Yeah, that's how it worked for me.
Like way back when I first started the business, it was like I got real excited to. I had a project that came in, and it was like a really big deal at the time. It was like an S550 Mustang, which was a 2017 Mustang. Then I was doing it in like 2018. It was a big deal. Like, built a Gen 2 deal for it and 6870s, this and that. But it was like, I'm pretty sure at the time when we researched, it was the first S550 running on like a Holley standalone. It still had the push button start, all the dash, the reverse camera, everything worked. But we got the thing running, I took it to alignment, put it on the dyno. I had all kinds of issues with that thing. We put it on there, and that's why I tell people check grounds and stuff, because I did it. I've taught myself everything I know, and the way you learn it is hard knocks. Like, if it's caused you enough trouble, you're never gonna forget that.
Yep.
You'll have that weird little thing. Like, it all was like the car at 7,300, that thing would pop. It'd lose one tooth on the crank wheel in the composite logger, or tooth logger on Holley, I guess. And it would lose it. And like every single time, I remember I fought that thing. I had it on dyno for days. Like, I did pull-up resist, like a oscilloscope, both of them. But when I oscilloscoped the wires themselves, it didn't show it missing it. So it was a noise into the Holley. The Holley had noise on it, and I couldn't figure it out for the longest time. And finally, I had it set up so I could run the Holley separate from the factory car. Jumped the starter, got it running, made a clean tug. I was like, well, what's this? And I started hunting grounds. I realized I ran a battery ground to the firewall sill and put that there. And then I took the grounding from the factory PDM, like the power distribution block, and had it on top of each other. So by connecting that to that and on top of the battery, so it was connected right to where the Holley was mounted. So it put that little bit of noise, like, chances are, am I ever going to run into that again? Probably not. But you know what I'm going to check? It's going to be that.
Yeah.
And then like that, going through all that, and in the Facebook groups from that, trying to figure it out. And then I told everybody after I found, because a lot of guys at the time were having the same issues, and they started figuring a lot of that out, and that's how I got hooked up with Headers Only. He's seen it, he's like, hey, we're doing the same thing. But what really was is there was some other things going on in the tune that it wasn't sync loss. It was just the closed loop it was so lean in the field map that it just ran out of closed loop to catch it, and it just lean popped. It's like, oh. He's like, I'm like the tooth logger's fine, but I'm like, send me the other log. I was like, okay.
Holley seems pretty susceptible to noise too, though.
It's super picky. It's really high maintenance when it comes to
When I was trying to run the factory computer with the Holley at the same time, because I wanted it to talk to the trans, getting all that to work, boy, it was something else, because I was constantly getting interference, mostly because I was running the same sensor to run two computers. So I can imagine when you were doing that the first time, these factory computers have so many different systems and so many things communicating that they'll mess up a standalone real quick.
Yeah, people don't understand how complicated newer cars are. Like, there's so much stuff going on. Like, for all the luxuries that you get to enjoy, like your heated seats, your keyless entry, like your keyless entry with your little fob, you don't realize how many antennas are in the car. And if that one antenna has a break-in wire, that don't work no more.
Yeah.
Like, it'll just gonna throw codes. And it's a very frustrating thing to track down.
Or for Ford, it just sends you a little stupid wrench that doesn't tell you anything.
Yeah.
Were you the one that fixed? I remember, man, I was having issues with like most of their Fords with Field Tech.
I started tuning for manual. It depends which issues. I don't know. I can't speak on that part because that's all Manuel, and there's companies who's got to run business. I don't want to deal with any of that. But they got it all figured out. Like, everything's running good. Like, you had Randy's truck out. They were testing just the other night, and we did some street testing and dyno pulls on it and everything's happy finally. So we can get that truck ready and rolling to hopefully go do the Cletus deal. So, but yeah, it's one of those things. Like, that was one other thing. You deal with a lot of people and you start talking. people think the whole performance world is pretty glamorous. They don't realize this. What people show you is not what it actually is. Like, people aren't posting about all the problems they have, or the amount of times, how long it takes to figure something out, or the amount of failures it takes to make that one good, put up that one social media post that's like, yeah, this is amazing. Look at this car. We bang this off super easy, but it's actually like, it was a struggle for a lot of people and a lot of time. Everybody just sees the finished product, but it's a work to get there.
Yeah.
And people, they'll get a brand new car and they'll buy it from a shop or something and not have the shop go through and vet it. Whether the shop doesn't have time or that's not what they do, they don't want to run any track and stuff. And they'll get it and they'll go take it to the track. And the car will it won't live up to their expectations that they've had for this car. And like, they don't realize that, man, sometimes you gotta, like, it takes 2-3 weekends to get a chassis dialed in and figure out the power management and everything else you gotta do, and the little quirks with every combo. Like, there was one lot of smart people who said, like, that last 1% of the whole combination car, like, it takes a solid 15% of the time to get that last 1% figured out. And a lot of cars don't have that last 1% sorted, like cold start, or just simple little things that annoy you. Like, you go driving down the highway and like you go around this traffic circle and you just tip into it ever so slight. It's like stock ECU stuff. You gotta street drive the thing. You gotta go put it through everything. And it got to a point with some of the stuff, you do stick cars, you could go out and do drivability with one person driving it, but if it's not the customer driving it, they drive different. Yeah. Like, I had one guy that...
I do that a lot. I'll tell guys, I'm like, you go drive it. They're like, why don't you?
It's not the same.
You will be different. It will make a difference. People don't realize that.
I had a dude with a stick car with like a Mega Squirt plug and play on it, and he's like, man, this thing is like, it's flooding out, it's doing this and that. I'm like, man, dude, it drove totally fine. I went and rode with him. He's one of the guys that he pushes the clutch in, or like when he starts rolling away, he doesn't gradually build RPM. He's like, up. So the thing's like, he's trying to drown the thing in accelerant enrichment just to get rolling. And I'm like, dude, don't. Like, I could fix that for you, but now you're gonna have a problem where when you drive it like a normal human being, it ain't gonna work right. But it
you
is
get
what
the
it
guys
is.
that do this a lot with the gas pedal. They're constantly in and out, in and out. I'm like, all right, look, I'm getting sick. I'm gonna get out.
They can't control a steady speed.
Yeah, my biggest issue was people that always wanted to try to impress you. Yeah. That's why I won't ride with people anymore. Because they always want to show you what their car can do. I'm like, I already know. We're good. You don't have to show me.
That's a little different. Like, I know what it'll do, but like, I want to. That's used to be like my greatest thing. Like, after doing a big build or something, it's like when the customer comes pick it up and you go for a ride with them, and it just scares them shitless. And
when you're driving.
No, let them drive it for a little bit and they'll tip into it. And like, I'll log it. I'll be like, dude, he's like, oh, and he gets all excited. He'll be like, yeah, dude, that was 15% TPS. Like, that thing was just about to light. And then we'll go out for a little bit, and like most of them, they understand. They're like, they trust me, drive the car. So we'll go out, make the trip. He'll be like, hey, okay, we'll swap. Like, show me what it'll do. And we'll go out, like, launch it off the brake and just feather it through, just and roll it down through there, get back, and they're white as a ghost. And it's like, oh, this is amazing. Like, I'm having a good time. It's like, I enjoy that part of it. It's the bad business part. You do it for passion, not business.
Yeah.
But it makes it,
when,
so you don't hate your job.
When somebody gets to enjoy their car after they've I usually get them sometimes after they've already had a bad experience. Mm-hmm. And then they'll text me, I was doing a car the other night, and he's like, man, this thing drives so smooth on a base file. He's like, it's unbelievable. I didn't know it could drive like that. That's what makes me want to keep doing it.
What's his name?
Should we say that?
Yeah.
A guy named Raph from Detroit. He's got a C7.
Yeah, I seen it on Instagram.
Huh?
He posted it.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. Well,
snitch. Just kidding. But yeah, it just, a lot of these guys, they don't realize how well their cars can run. And then you redo it and they're like, this is crazy. But at least you get them from Jump Street because you build the whole thing.
Yeah, not always. You'll always end up with a lot of it. You'll get into it after they've had bad experience with another tune. It's like they'll drive the truck around. It's like they can't go through drive-thrus anymore because the thing's going to stall. Or they're going to bump into neutral in the drive-thru. I'm like, no, that's not. It's like, well, you said, that's just how
that's just how it is.
That's just how it is.
Yeah.
That's what they're like.
Yeah,
that's how that throttle body is. I'm like, no, it's not. You got to change how you do your idle strategy has to be changed.
That's tuners that don't care.
Or they did it for somebody and it's maybe not what they normally do. So they didn't put any time in it.
So they don't care.
They bench flash it like, here, go do this.
So they don't care.
Or lazy. Yeah.
You're not going to load that in somebody's car and tell them that's how it is.
No, I have guys like when I do a stock GM ECU deal, like I'll have them like, you gotta, it's like, hey, can I come by and you tune this in? I'm like, no, like you drop it off, leave it with me 3 days. Because I need a full day to do all the wide open
Then you need days
and
for cold
drivability
start.
stuff. And I got to do cold starts. And I got to do summertime. You can't, like you get 1 shot, maybe 2 shots at a cold start. Maybe. Wintertime, which is amazing in Canada, you can get like, I don't know, however many times of a cold start. So you can go out there, leave it outside when it's minus 40 out, warm it all the way up, log all of the short trim, idle air stuff, do it, fix it all, go, like give it 10 minutes and it'll be back cold as a bone, like stone cold. And you do it again and again and again. Then you roll it inside and it's fine.
We get 2.
Yeah.
1 in the morning, 1 in the evening. If we haven't fixed it by then, I got to wait till the next day.
Yeah. And then then you got to do the whole like, well, if I was homeboy with this car, I'm going to fire this thing up dead cold and I'm going to go try to drive it. Because nothing saying the hot drivability is going to be good doesn't say that when it's cold, all the enrichments and everything aren't going to throw something else off. So you got to.
Sometimes you kind of want to leave it to where it doesn't cold drive as well because they always want to get in it and go hot rod it when it's cold.
Well, and that's a nice thing. Like
I have had that on one guy where he would always fire it up and within 30 seconds he's already getting on it on the street. So I purposely enriched it enough to where he'd stop doing that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's one of the huge benefits. Like some stock ECU strategies, you have all the like torque limiting stuff on low cooling temp and stuff. But standalone stuff, you can implement a lot of stuff so guys can't do things.
Yeah.
Like that's the biggest benefit to standalone stuff is safeties. Like you can have coolant pressure safeties. Like, oh yeah, homeboys, like this thing's making all the coolant pressure and he doesn't realize it, but he really wants to win this. You can put a safety in it to keep it from gushing water everywhere and torching the head.
Well,
like,
to try to keep them from doing it.
You it knocked the head gasket out of it, but you can probably there's a good chance you might be able to save it.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
That's something one of the recent features I'd seen on the Motec, when you key it on, it'll prime the meth, and if it sees the pressure, then it'll go ahead and go into the map that runs the meth. Mm-hmm. If it doesn't see pressure, it'll go back to a map that doesn't run the meth.
Yeah, just verify.
So I thought that was really cool.
Well, like there's other cheap.
Which I'm sure Holley can do the same thing.
Again, if you wanted to set it up, and there is again, you got to figure out what you want to do with it and use the tools you're provided to do it.
Now people are going to be like, "Can you do that on mine?"
Well, man, yeah, that's right. Yeah, you start talking about it, and everybody's like, "Hey, it's one of the things you go talk to people like you talk to other people in the industry. Like for example, the wheels get turning like something you think back like, oh yeah, I did so and so on this car. Like, hey, maybe I could try this, or like you could do simple little things. Is like one of the biggest benefits I also have, like doing everything from mega trucks to JDM car, little turbo 4-bangers to big V8 nitrous stuff or Whipple stuff, and it was like you get to see what all these different motorsports what they use, because all these different motorsports have like a certain tool or a certain way of doing something that, hey, if I do this and this, that's kind of freaking cool. Like that's going to help this out a lot, or this safety in this, or you get in a drift world, like all the different ways that you calibrate a rev limiter to act, or the way it sounds and how it runs into it, because you realize that, hey, these guys get judged on what they sound like when they're on the chip.
Damn.
Or how hard, or if they're using the chip too much, or this
you
or
build
that.
those too? Damn. Crazy.
It's all the weird little stuff you got to deal with. And like, again, it takes forever to get everything right in the way you want it. And it's like Coyote stuff, like 2D, like spool tables, like we were talking earlier on Boyd stuff, how quick it with a lighter turbo. There's 2D tables that need to be calibrated to make it do that. And then when you go to make it do that, when you want to change your launch boost and launch RPM, you got to swing those tables the same way, just the way it runs into all the different.
I think one of the things I was thinking on Holley, I'm comparing the Holley Motec just in my own head too, right? Because you know a lot more of that. We have 15 position switch. We can do 15 different maps.
Yeah, well,
but Holley doesn't have a map switch, or do they? They do.
Oh yeah, they have a map.
Not the key thing.
They have the key thing, but also what we'll do.
The key thing's only 2.
4.
Is it?
Yeah, 4.
Oh, I got the wrong key thing.
I
Mine's
think it's 4.
shit.
Depending which one. I think
mine only has 2.
I haven't used it for so long because I started implementing like the AEM 11 turn, 11 position.
And you can use that to alter whatever, right?
2D table you want. Like I've got a customer's truck that I built. It's like a Dodge. It's kind of, I'll have to show you a picture. It's a pretty sweet truck. It's like a first gen Dodge dually truck. It was an extended cab long box Cummins diesel truck, but now it's like a medium box. We cut the front side of the box down so to center the axle in the bed because it's got a lot over it. the long boxes have more overhang than the short boxes, so it's got more rear weight. Like the truck ended up being 50-50 weight distribution, and it was a 1-ton frame and dually deal, but it's got 24 by 14 wheels on it and stuff.
Jeez.
It's like a SB 6-liter, like an LQ4 type of deal, and it's got VS Racing 6266s on it, and that thing there has the AEM turn switch, and that thing there on 0, we have it set up so he can run 87 pump gas in it and tow a trailer with it, because he owns a chicken farm, and he'll load that thing and put a septic tank on a trailer behind it. He'll haul a load of bales with it, and he'll drive it everywhere. And then he can turn it up, and like at this position, I told him, it's like at position 5, like, or anything other than 0, you got to have good gas in it. I'm like, if you turn it up, say position 5, like this is where you can tell when he earns getting into some good boost, because all idle tables come in that like chop up the idle, and you can significantly hear a difference. It's like, hey, this is where you start to party. Then you have all the way up to 11. So like on the 24 by 14s, like that thing there on 93 pump gas and meth, like it made 800 wheel on I think like 19 pounds. But on a 24 by 14, that's the other thing people don't realize. I look at the field table. It's like, oh yeah, we've made our 800 goal. I'm like, dude, I'm gonna teach you a thing. Look at this field table. Like this thing's making a whole lot of power. I'm like, because we weighed the wheels, they weigh 138 pounds a piece.
I just did a truck on 26s or 28s.
The red one?
The red one. And that thing made on, what was it, 12 or 13 pounds of boost. It was making like 9 something.
Yeah.
The LT 427 setup, big turbo.
And
And
So I
I'm
was
like,
dude, you should put some 28s on this.
I'm like, we should stop. And he's like, no, man, it only made this. I'm like,
but
I don't think you realize what this thing's really making, because it was on a dyno with those giant wheels. We take those wheels off, I bet it picked up another 100, 150.
easy.
Really?
Oh,
There
yeah.
was-
Like on 15s or some shit?
You know, on just anything not 300 pounds of wheel.
Yeah.
There was a YouTuber, I can't remember, it was a diesel guy, but they had a
Wesley Chaplin?
no, there was, I can't remember, it was like a smaller YouTube guy, but he had a Dodge Ram Cummins truck. And he
Wesley
had
Diesel?
like 24,
Just
huh? He had like 24 by 14s on it, and then he had the stock wheels. He dynoed it with the 24 by 14s, made a pass on it, and I think it made like 360 wheel. He swapped the stock wheels and tires on. They were the same diameter, but different weight, and people don't understand, like, moving the mass further out makes it even worse.
Yep.
So you put the big wheels on, it's even worse. And then he swapped the stock wheels on. The thing picked up like 30 wheel on a diesel deal. 30 horse and like 60 foot-pounds. It's like, dude, like that's huge.
Yeah. Especially when you're only making 300-ish.
Yeah, like that's a significant difference.
That's a big percentage.
And then you start going to bigger tires. Like that's other times. Sometimes you get guys that have their street setups different than their drag setup, and they'll screw up and get a drag set with taller diameter slick. I'm like, dude, it's like, man, this thing seems slow. It's like, yeah, you murdered the gear ratio.
Yeah.
Like it's not the same.
Yeah, I did that on purpose on mine to try to get it better on the highway. It was just making too much down low, so I put a 30 on it, and it made my gears longer and worked better from a roll. But at the track, it was a little slower than it would have been on the 28.
Yeah, you have to make.
But that's
changes
how the
in
big
power
tire
management.
the big tire guys do it. They just adjust the gearing for that tire, for that full rollout, and I mean they work.
Oh yeah, it's just that you have to know that you can't just go into it thinking, oh, I just changed.
No,
tires.
you got to
That's
set
no
up
big deal.
for that.
Like it's so complicated into it that people don't realize how many little things need to come together to achieve one goal.
Since we're on diesels, like, I know you work on diesels, obviously, right? It's your page, whatever.
Yeah.
What diesels don't you work on?
I try not to touch them too much. Again, the guy that's
But
got
like,
the first.
you don't touch Duramaxes, Power Strokes, Cummins?
I don't really touch anything. If I have my choice, I don't touch anything. The only diesels I really touch is my one good buddy. Like I built him, it'd be like a 1970 Dodge Challenger. Like he bought it.
The yellow one?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That thing, like when we bought that thing,
I think
everybody
it's
gets so pissed off that we ruined the car, but they don't realize what the car was. Like there was no unibody left in the front of it. Like the strut towers and like all the shock towers and everything, there was license plates holding the thing together. Like it didn't have, the cross member was rusted through and everything. So we converted it, and like we were sitting there having beers one time. It was like when we were still newly friends, and he's got like a 1-ton Dodge Cummins frame there. It's like, man, I love first gens and this and that. And then he dropped his car off. I'm like looking at him, like having a beer. I was like, you know what? I could make this happen. He's like, you can do that? I'm like, I can do whatever I want. It just might take a little longer to figure out how we got to do this. But we ended up taking a front half of like a 92 Cummins 1-ton frame, then taking a 78 1-ton frame and using the back half of that because the frame steps up on the newer style. So we cut the step up out, and then the other two frames like butted up to each other, and we just modified all the pickup points and everything, and then built a stainless floor and everything for the Challenger, so we could just lower it onto so the frame rails come up to it, so it doesn't sit real stupid.
I think it's badass.
And then did a 5.9 12 valve with little things in it, and like took the factory turbo and modified it because we did a compound setup, and a lot of times in the compound setups you have troubles where you put the little guy gets oversped so much that you just destroy the little turbo all the time because chassis speed gets too high and then they just die. So we went into it, and it's an internally gated deal. So take the internal gate apart, ended up increasing the hole size, porting it all, and then taking a small block Chevy exhaust valve, turning it down, and putting it in as a wastegate. So we went from, I can't remember what size it, but we increased it probably 15 mil or something, so we could slow down, and we run separate manual boost controllers for the big turbo and the little turbo, so we could control the transition point between it. So we can have it light off real quick because it's a stick truck too, stick car.
Yeah.
So it's just a riot. And he drives that thing. Again, chicken farmer, he tows the trailers with that thing everywhere. There's pictures floating around on all the diesel diesel Facebook pages.
It looks like a Mad Max car.
It's cool.
It's
cool. And that thing made 600 and something wheel and 1,100 foot-pounds, and it's still got
How
baby
does it
injectors.
handle the weight driving around?
Totally fine because it's a truck chassis.
Oh, okay.
We did the truck chassis, but it's still two-wheel drive, and just kind of dropped it down a bit. But there's pictures of him.
It's not 4x4?
No, it's two-wheel drive. You physically, to try to get stuff low enough on a four-wheel on those things, it's just because they're solid front axles, so you're kind of married to physical constraints of oil pan and motor because a Cummins is you want to try to get underneath the hood, it's got to be so high. Yeah. But we did that, and also for when he's got driving around the farms and stuff, it's got to be kind of high.
What does it have, 50s on it? 45s?
Oh, what are those? Oh, I think they're only 37s or 35s on that thing.
Yeah, damn.
There's only so much you can fit in a Challenger's wheel well. Yeah. But there's pictures of that floating around, him with a trailer behind that thing with a load of bales or a septic tank, all kinds of weird stuff. And people just lose their mind. Yeah. And when the thing lights off and it just takes the little 60-pound boost gauge and just goes and tucks it around. We originally, everything we end up doing, it snowballs. We're oh yeah, we're not gonna put this thing over 40 pounds. And then we do valve springs and all this, and we get it together, and we're this thing moves pretty good. And we just get more and more and more. We'll turn the governor springs up a little bit more. Before you know it, it's wrapping 60-pound gauges and doing things that probably shouldn't.
So you're done with diesel swaps?
I'll swap them and stuff, but I don't.
If the money's right.
I don't want to get into.
Yeah.
This is just so dirty. You do an oil change on a diesel tow rig, and it's I'm stained. I'm man.
I had a 6.4 truck, and every 2 weeks we put a new motor in it. But boy, it ran for them 2 weeks. And then we put another motor in it, and it's so disgusting. And the smell never comes off you.
Yeah. No, that's brutal.
So tell us about your immaculate 302 you got running.
So when my big tire Fox, I didn't want to, I didn't get it together in time for a couple local street heads-up races. I ended up buying, I had a customer come through and he said, hey, I got a $1,500, 1988 Fox body coupe. I was like, oh, cool. Hey, it's $1,500. Yeah, I'll take it. And it shows up and I'm like, this thing's beat. It's got seats in it, but it doesn't have carpet. It's got a bunch of rust on it, a bunch of other stuff. But I see, it already had a C4 in it, and it was a dead stock, never been opened in 302, which is a whole other problem with it, but I'll get to that later. But we ended up running it, I had to put it in a group chat with some buddies. I'm like, hey, yeah, I think I'll put this together, and I'll run the one index class, a 750 8th mile index class. Oh, there's no way that thing will go that fast. You're going to blow it up, this and that. I'm like, man, you just made me want to do it more. So I ended up doing it, do all the 90s trick. You do the football and the passenger rear spring, and you go through, you take the belt tensioner apart and you reclock, drill it and grind it and repin it so you can run the belt on the opposite side of the tensioner to make it so the thing's only running the water pump and an alternator, no power steering, no nothing else, and a bunch of little stuff. And I ended up building basically a standalone fuel system for a wet kit. And so it's got a little tiny Harley battery to run the thing, and then a fuel cell with a fuel pump on it. We just run quick C16 in it and pump gas in the main cell, and then just drill and tap the intake for 2 fogger nozzles. That's it. It's just as bad as it can be. and put the thing off. You take the air filter off, and you launch that thing. I quickly built a C4 out of a bunch of blown up C4 parts I had. So it's got a trans brake deal in it, but that thing there is still stock ECU. It's never been tuned, no nothing. So all we did is pulled the spout out, put that thing at 0 degrees initial timing. So you're basically pulling like 14 for where they like it. Set it up so the kit comes on as soon as you release the trans brake. And when you come up, there's no two-step or anything. It's stock ECU. So it's just wherever the motor will take it to on nuts. Let go of the brake, and the thing hits all of the kit. So when I dynoed it, basically we're spraying more than it makes NA. And like that car there, where I'm at, after the very first race I took it to, like I hadn't driven it. I drove it on the dyno, off the dyno, show up at the track, make one test pass. I'm like, this thing's fast. Because the shifter is set up wrong, because normally it's like a front entrance cable shifter. So the gates are all backwards, because this guy's got the shifter cable welded to the back of the tunnel going into this thing from the back. So the gates are backwards. So you pull first, it goes all the way third. So you have to be super careful to grab it, and the trans brake button's on the top. So I went first to third, and I started making a bunch of noise, because apparently I forgot to check the rear brakes, because one brake drum was falling apart inside. I'm like, okay, we're cool. It already went faster than it was supposed to for the class. Like, it was a 730 index. I went like 732 on the first pass, first to second. And again, this is at like 5,500 DA or 5,000 DA. And this is a dead stock iron-headed Fox. But we realized the problem was this thing had been sitting all the time on the dyno and everything. I didn't realize it didn't leak oil. Get to the track, when all the G's are, the whole China wall rear gasket of the intake, it's MIA. So every pass we make, we got to like take a whole can of brake clean the whole bell housing, everything off, and it was zip tie, microfiber towels up underneath it. The rad's plugged in the thing, so it's overheating like crazy. Ended up running it out and winning the whole weekend with that thing for the class. Then come back the next year, port the upper intake and this other stuff, and we ended up going to the finals, and lost in that because it was just too fast. I lost basically breakout on the index. I treated them, but it was like 7/10,000ths of a second more of a breakout. Like, motherfucker. But like this thing here, I was out of the kit for most of the pass. Fender racing the guy and still go 720s. Like, if I brought that thing to sea level, the thing's going to be like a low 6 car. Go like, it might be able, if a person jets it up and leans on it, like that thing would go high fives on a good track. And it's just got some 15-year-old, like 26 by 8.5s on it, and just all the usual 90s goodness, and nothing fancy, no tuning, no nothing. So like, you can go out there and buy a cheap shit box and put a kit on it and go have a lot of fun with your buddies. You don't need to spend $15,000 on like some turbo swapped something if you're not a fabricator guy. Like turbo, people don't realize when you do a junkyard LS turbo deal, like if you can't fabricate, it's not cheap anymore.
Right.
Like, or if you can't wire, it's not cheap anymore, because even the guys that are doing stock ECU stuff, you got to deal with all the wiring, and then VATs delete. Then you got to have somebody that's going to tune it for you, because chances are if you can't fabricate and you can't wire, you're not going to be able to tune it. There's a lot of guys, like, it's kind of hand in hand if you're in the industry or nobody or something like that. So you could still like get into it, go buy a cheap car, and spray it hard and just have fun, and then you're into it for $1,500. The kit, like, if that car blows up, it owes me nothing. Like, I don't even know how many miles are on that thing or anything. It blows up, it's like, cool. I'm out. Like, I got a lot of passes out of this thing, and I paid $1,500. Like, you could do the same thing, and then it's the whole back in the junkyard LS thing, and you could do it. And like the whole mentality, everybody was like, oh yeah, 302s, they split down the center, you make $500. I'm like, it's not. People realize, yeah, they split down the center. A lot of times it's a tune issue, or you realize the stock ECUs, like, you go back to it and think, like an EEC4 from way back in the day, those things had the processing power that's less than like most people's microwaves or fridges now. Like, the computers have huge gains now, so you can only do so much correctly on the old systems.
And only so fast.
Yeah, it's like, you look at the old like OptiSpark TPI cars. Yeah, I seen the head.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother.
But even in like the 98 Trans Ams and Camaros, if you ever look at the logging on those, it's in square wave.
Yeah, it's.
I'm like, what? No, we're not doing that.
Yeah,
it's
rough.
bad. And people are going fast with it. I get it, but it's not nearly what they would have if you actually had something that ran it properly.
Yeah, it's something you can log it and actually control stuff properly. And also, like, people get into with standalone stuff, they don't pay attention to the simple things. Like, they don't verify timing. They don't actually sweep it.
I didn't verify timing
On a standalone?
Learned that lesson. Holley.
I've had a bunch of guys, yeah. And then like
I was like, man, why is it acting like so rowdy on 12 degrees of timing?
it's like this thing's wild.
It clearly wasn't.
And then you're like, verify timing and then verify induction delay. People don't, just because it's right at idle doesn't mean it's right all the way up. Like you can have some combinations where it's right at idle and you slowly bring it up towards red line and that thing's going to gain like 10 degrees of timing or 12 degrees of timing or lose timing. Like a lot of stuff, if the numbers don't match, there's probably a reason for it, simple like that. And you take your time out of it. Like I get it, in the LS world it's tough. Like a lot of guys don't want to do piston stop and mark TDC or this or that. Coyote world, kind of the same thing, but like it's a valuable step. If you care about your product, you're going to pay someone to tune it. You're going to pay just the time and effort into it. Like it's a simple step to make sure like what your tuner's seeing is actually what you're getting. Because if he's commanding 15 degrees or 12 degrees and the thing's actually getting 22, like it's gonna blow its shit everywhere. You don't have a chance. It's just gonna make fucking soup out of the oil pan. Like, look at it.
The benefit of the stock computer, you can do a
you get
cam
spoiled.
crank sync easy.
Yeah, exactly.
So when I went into doing some of the standalone, this was obviously way back, but I didn't know that you had to do that. I didn't even know what a timing light was. I knew what it was, but I'd never used one. But that's something I see a lot of the guys that are doing Hollies that haven't verified none of that.
Yeah,
they start trying to make big power and wonder why around 1200 they start, just destroying everything. Mm-hmm. Like, I just don't get it, man. I didn't even have a lot of time in it. I'm like, how do you know?
Yeah. Have you verified it?
You have no idea how much timing you had in it.
Like you run into some weird shit. I had one car that did all kinds of weird stuff. I can't remember what ECU was on it at the time, but we ended up going through and marking TDC on the balancer all the way around for like do the 4 points so we could go through the firing order and check every coil. Because there was one coil that was way off. Like it was out 10 degrees of the others. For whatever reason, some wiring on the car or something that came in when we dynoed it, and it just threw us for a loop. Like we were reading plugs. I'm like, man, this little guy here, like it's not like the rest of them. And it's one of those things, like people don't want to pull plugs. Like they're the only soldier in the battle. They tell you a lot.
Any tuner that doesn't pull plugs is just being half-assed.
Yeah,
I make customers do it all the time. They're like, well, my last tuner didn't have to do that. I said, why are you using me? Yeah. Because your last tuner messed it up.
Yeah, he didn't have you.
Let's do this the right way. Yeah. So you're making 1,200 horsepower. You're on a stock computer. Pull a plug and let's see what it looks like.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and sometimes you'll be on the dyno and do it. Like I've done it with, like a lot of turbo cars. We'll put it on the dyno, we'll like make the tugs. And I'm like, it's okay power, but you're just kind of cautious because you don't want to kill it because you don't know anything that this thing's been through. Yeah. Then you pull a plug, it's like, oh man, like this ain't nothing. And then you're at the window where you're so low on timing that you put 1 degree and it doesn't gain a bunch. But then you put 2 more in it and that
gains like
that
40.
Motherfucker starts taking off. It's like, dude, like we just picked up 120 wheel because we were way far off on timing.
Yeah. And every combo is a lot different.
And it's just, and everything will react different. Like you have all that extra time and people don't realize like that thing's going to come up way quicker. You're going to drive it. It's going to be way more responsive when that thing lights. You can go do burnouts with your friends way better. You can look.
Well, a lot of people confuse, high timing with being aggressive. Yeah. And that's something that I've never really quite understood how they got people to this whole conservative thing. It drives me nuts. I'm like, that's not really what they're saying. What they're saying is they made it inefficient because they're scared of their tune-up.
Yeah.
So if you dial it in properly, you check plugs, you check everything. When you're tuning these cars, why would pulling 4 degrees be a good thing?
Yeah. You're just handicapping yourself.
You're just making somebody's car less efficient because you don't trust your tune-up. If you trust your tune-up, wouldn't that be where you would run it?
Yeah, Band-Aids.
Yeah. That's something I see a lot in the industry where they're like, oh, well, they turned it up on the dyno and then they pulled out like 4 degrees for safety. No.
It's because
they pulled out 4 degrees because they don't know what the hell they're doing or because they don't trust their tune-up.
Yeah, because that thing rolled through part of a fuel map where it had like 30% closed loop correction. And that one time, that closed loop correction didn't happen fast enough.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh shit. She routed pretty hard there. let's take it easy. We had a scare.
But that seems like a big thing there. I don't know if it's in the standalone world as often, but in the OE computer world, it's everybody. It's conservative. It's conservative. Oh, he's running it rich, so it's conservative. No, you're just flooding the motor.
Yeah, you're just washing rings.
Yeah,
it's like
it's not good.
It's like the old tune-ups. So you get in the old nitrous world, like the '90s tune-ups. They used to be like they would have a bigger fuel jet than a nitrous jet. Then they ended up with like square jetting, and then like people started realizing, like you got to lean on these things. Like it needs to be way leaner than you think.
Yeah, if it's not lighting the candles, you're not doing nothing.
Exactly. Like you need to.
What nitrous system you use most?
Oh man, the reason I'm a nitrous guy is because I'm cheap. Like it's bits and pieces of everything.
You use solenoids?
Huh? Oh no. Wow.
I'm weird about that.
I
I won't
rebuild every
use a
single
used
one.
solenoid only because I've had one time. I had one stick, and I'll never do it again.
Yeah, I've rebuilt. I'll go through and rebuild all of them for anything. But like my personal, like what I do personally, again, way different than what you do.
It's
on a
way
customer
different
car.
than you're gonna do on
Like,
a customer car.
You're a little bit more paying attention to shit a little bit more. Like you notice, like, hey, wow, something doesn't sound right. That felt way too spicy for what it is.
Yeah, I've had that moment.
I'm like, maybe I should check to make sure that timing retard's coming in. Because
Yeah.
that thing was fucking rowdy for a split second there. Because the amount of people that'll do, or man, like nitrous, like when people are doing turbo LS stuff and they do the nitrous stuff, they put a big kit on it, and then they won't do anything with the fuel enrichment.
Right.
And they're just praying that Holley closed loop Jesus is taking care of it all. It's like, dude, like, come on, like one of these times.
One of those times, it's going to be in a weird Excel table or something, and then enrichment's not going to come on.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you're screwed.
Or like that you're going to have an alternator going bad, and it's going to put a bunch of, as other people don't realize, when you have an alternator start failing, like it'll put a bunch of noise into the system.
But not only
And then
that,
when the
it'll
system-
shut the Holley off. It'll shut off certain things.
Yeah, if it's that bad, like when it's not gradually that bad, like you'll have, if it sees noise, like a Holley or most standalones, if it sees a Y band is really erratic, closed loop will not be active. It'll just disable that shit itself.
Yep.
It won't make any changes. And a lot of closed loop cowboys, like that's when you run into a lot of problems.
Yeah, I see that a lot on the Ford stuff too, though.
Oh yeah,
A lot of the Ford remote stuff, they just get it close enough.
just because they're blessed with factory wide bands.
Right. With GM, we don't have that, so we have to make sure it's dead on.
Yeah.
Which honestly, you still should do. But people are like, "Oh, the Ford is so much easier." I'm like, "Yeah, because you're relying on it to tune itself." But let a sensor fail,
Yeah.
and you're done.
Yeah,
There's nothing to save it.
It's like I've had a conversation with some people. Like, if there was more tuners that race cars, like I would love to have it as like, okay, everybody pull the lanes with your car. We're gonna run a heads up thing, but what we're gonna do, everybody has to unplug their O2s, and we're gonna make a lick. And whoever shit doesn't blow up,
Most
makes
of
it
them won't
pass.
make it down the track.
I feel bad. Like Boyd's and all the guys that would send me logs. I'm like, dude, you gotta make another. You gotta make another. I'm like, why? I'm like, it's like 4%. Like, well, I want onesie twosies. I want onesie twosies for when it fails.
So I was remote tuning the Camaro for him, and he's like, all right, I made a hit, and I'm like, all right, go make another one. What do you mean? Like, go make another one. We're on like 4th, 5th hit. He's like, dude, why do we got to do so many pulls? I'm like, because it needs to be perfect, 1% to 2%. That's what I'm very picky on that. He's like, well, I was like, it's not a Ford. It doesn't have a factory wideband.
Yeah.
This is what we need to do. And he finally listened. He's like, all right.
Yeah.
But it's funny. A lot of people don't realize that.
Well, they don't understand. It's like if you get it that tight, when you go back and look at stuff, you can see when something's going wrong. You got injectors that are not flowing with their shit anymore, or a fuel pump going away that if you're not logging fuel pressure and that kind of stuff. Like if you see it used to be onesie twosies, and all of a sudden the thing's like 10s, 15s. You know?
Yeah, the tune don't
Something's
change.
up. Like either it could be that, or you got an exhaust leak. It's a false lean condition that you got to deal with because shit's not going to run right if it's running richer than it should.
Yeah.
And exhaust leaks are like man. Oh yeah,
you'll chase your tail.
You can't remotely fix exhaust leaks.
Try not having wide bands.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
How that whole not wanting to do stock ECU stuff.
I was remote tuning a truck the other day, and I'm like, man, I can't get it to get out of negative timing. I'm like, what the hell's going on? Why can't I get this thing to idle with positive timing? And I knew it wasn't the torque tables. And he's like, yeah, so there was a 3/8 hole right behind the throttle body. He's like, that explains it.
You didn't hear that?
Yeah, I was like, that's the only downside of remote. But at least I know once I got to that point, I'm like, I'm going outside of what I would normally have to do. If something's wrong, I need you to check this.
Yeah.
So
Verify these few things. Come back at me.
But I could not imagine remote tuning some of these cars that these people are like, I get some bad stuff, but I feel like the standalone world probably gets worse because they're having to build everything, right? They're having to do the wiring, they're having to do all of it.
Yeah,
or at least we're relying on mostly factory stuff.
Exactly. So you're kind of blessed that way. But then again, you don't know if
we get some
somebody's
shit
getting in
boxes
there
that we
like,
don't
I
know.
want a remote start. I want to put these LEDs in. I want to put this in.
Pedal commanders.
Yeah. Oh God.
those pedal commanders on the so on a C7, they'll put those throttle commanders.
Yeah.
The problem is when you go to, I had one where you go to flash it and it blocks it out. It won't let you flash the car, or it'll finally flash and then the car won't start, or it acts all weird. And it was a pedal commander.
Man,
Unplug it, everything works perfect.
Man, that
So imagine what else that's doing.
Oh, exactly. Well, like you run into all, and that's the other problem with like stock ECU stuff. Like you have like some of the older GM, like the 99 to 07 LS trucks. I had one of them when you couldn't talk to it on high speed. Low speed, you could sometimes do it, but like I went through the regular stuff. Like, you know, the radio for the steering wheel control, then you got the remote starts, but it ain't coming down to it because Dorman makes an HVAC deal that it's self-programming. So you have the automatic climate control and not, and when you plug it in, it figures it out and self-programs on the CAN bus line. But with that plugged in, it would not work. Like you could not communicate on CAN bus, like to talk to it, to flash it.
I've had a brick like 4 or 5 ECUs on one vehicle. After that, I limit anything I do 07 and below. It's very rare that I'll do it. And if I do it, we're going to have a conversation before. Because this guy's like, well, I don't know why it's going through computers. It's got to be something you're doing. I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Why?
They lose communication. They lose sync. They're just shit. They're old. They're not good. And at that point, at the price of a Terminator, if you're going to make power in one of these older trucks, why would you not put a Terminator on it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, like when the Terminators first came out, like they came out almost within a couple $100 of what people were selling swap harnesses.
Yeah.
And it's just like, why? Like by the time you get a swap harness and buy HP tuner credits, you're already over what the Terminator was. And then you got a wideband. Like you got to buy a wideband.
I noticed was a big difference when I put the Holley on my blue car. The spark strategy, the timing has to be much better because the car was so much cleaner on that than it was on a factory ECU.
All the dwell control. And
Yeah.
You can go a long way.
We have dwell control, but I don't know that I feel it works properly.
Yeah, without verifying it some way.
Right.
I don't know. But then again, like I've had some good ones. Like I got one customer that had for the longest time like a Gen 3 routed LS, PO1 ECU, you know, wideband and another boost control, all these extra stuff, extra nannies, and like the MSD 2-step on it. So you got all these boxes trying to make it do what a Terminator would have done for cheaper.
Man, I'm making it wrong. I've seen people make like 1,400 on a PO1 and live, but it's not
to get
it's
there.
It's not common. It's not. Yeah. Typically, what I see around about 1,500 is where the stock ECUs start to either they're pulling so much processing, trying to make everything work that they'll glitch. You're basically, I think, and I know people have made more. I've made 1,800 on a stock computer, but I didn't want to run it like that because of that glitch, that chance, that issue.
Yeah, you don't know when that thing's going to pop and bang and it ain't going to be pretty.
Well, I had one, I was making a pull. I was about 1,500, 15 something, and it glitched and lifted ahead.
Yeah.
Literally just mid-pull, just whoop. I was like, what was that? I'm sure as shit of getting water. I'm like, man. Luckily, it was copperhead gaskets. I just popped them off, put it back on, and we were good.
Yeah. Click that thing down and color good.
But it's just crazy that, you know, what some of these people will do with these stock computers when it's the same price as a standalone.
When you're at that point, you have so much invested in like you're going to make 1,500 or 1,200 or even 1,000. Like you have so much invested in the motor. Why not spend it on something where you can have some safeties?
Yeah.
Just simple things like, oil pressure safety. It's like how many people in like the LS land launching cars and watch oil pressure just like off the brake? Like, dude,
I saw it on mine.
You better throw like 1.5 liters in this thing.
Yeah.
And then once you get it happy, like once you get enough oil in it that this doesn't happen, remark the stick because that's where you need to put it from now on.
Yeah, we had to adjust the pickup in the oil pan a lot to get that to work.
Get that height right.
Yeah. But that's two areas that I don't understand why people skimp on is fueling and tuning. Mm-hmm. Yeah, limiting what your tunability is and putting cheap injectors in things.
Because it's one of the things at the end. You get into so much, they've been hit so many times through it.
Yeah, but all that prep they did is now ruined.
Yeah, you get the sob stories like, oh man, I spent so much money on this and that. The motor was this much, this was that much. Like, can you give me a deal on tune? I'm like, why? Like, this should be like where you want to be like the most concerned about because this is what protects the whole investment and how much you get to enjoy it.
This is where you're gonna tip me.
Yeah, like
or even better when you get the guys that thought the grass was greener somewhere else.
Yeah.
And then they come back, or they went to somebody and the car ran like shit, and you fixed it, and they're like, "Man, I already paid him this much." And like,
So?
bro, what?
gonna be
All right, so I should charge you double then, right?
Double, right?
Because I fixed it and he didn't.
Yeah, you get hit up. It's, hey man, you still got that file that you had in my car before? Like I had so and so try some stuff. I want to go back to yours. I'm like, man.
Yep, it's this much.
I was like, oh really? I could do it, but or if they're like the real bad guys you go into, it's like, oh yeah, no, I think I deleted it. Highlight and click. Oh, it's gone. Oh shoot, man, my computer glitched. I just tried to open it to verify it, but it's gone now.
You won't believe my hard drive crashed.
Yeah.
Crazy.
1 in a million years.
That's
What
scary.
do you prefer? Like, I know this is a big controversial topic, but you know, a lot of guys might say it on on comments and stuff like that. But you know, people say they can make big power or the most power on the carburetor.
Well, in theory, like there is a bunch of stuff to that theory-wise, because people don't realize a carburetor, latent heat vaporization, as it comes through, it's going to cool the intake charge, and distribution gets better. That's why, like, whatever they were smoking in the 80s and 90s when everybody did TBIs and CFI injection, like, it's the worst of every world. They were just miserable. You just had like a shower head just and just hoping it goes places.
Damn.
And the droplets are too big. They don't go far. Like, I ran into it a lot on like you ran into the Holley snipers and all the throttle body injection deals. Because where it's placed, the distribution sucks. Like I had one car, like a stick Nova, it was like a 400 something cubic inch deal. And that thing, we run it way leaner on the kit than on motor because of distribution. And when that thing there, when it's on motor, like it going from 12.7 to like 11.2, it picked up 60 wheel. Which
Because
is like, it's one of those
quarters.
things. You can't rely on a number. You have to go find what works, and then you can go back to that number and be like, hey, yeah, this is what worked. And like if it strays from that, you can't be closed-minded on what works.
Yeah, my car, I run 11.4, and everybody's like, "Oh, that's too rich." I'm like, "Well, I make more power than you do."
Yeah, it worked out better. Like
I've tried 11.8, didn't like it. Tried 12.2, doesn't like it.
Yeah.
11.4, it's where it's at. Is it a distribution issue? Maybe. But I've seen the wide bands on an LS engine, and we were talking about this on Brian's podcast, that it's over a point and a half between different cylinders.
oh yeah,
On
like
8
it's-
wide bands.
Yeah, you want to get scared. You go on an engine dyno that has 8 O2s, and then
Yeah.
you're gonna be like,
I wonder how the
Worried.
Coyote distribution is.
I don't know. I'd be curious. I've never been blessed enough to be around 8 O2s to get
What
8
about
EGTs.
the 8 EGTs? Are they pretty close?
You can get them pretty close, but you get into so much, like a lot of things. If guys have 8 AGTs, you've got 8 big ass injectors, and the flow rate between the injectors is never minty. Like at different rates, they're going to be different. And then you run into, did they put the EGT, what's the header pipe like? Like where's the bend in it? Where do they put the bung? How deep is the bung? Like how deep is the actual probe?
Yeah.
Because where if the probe's deeper versus a shallow, it's going to give a way different reading. Like one could be off 100 degrees just because homeboy tapped that thing in a little bit further than the other one. There's so many variables unless you verify it, and like you go in with you take your digital caliper, you mark every single one, put them all into the same height and the same place on a
Figured
bend.
that's what they were doing.
Well, a lot of people don't. That's the problem. Or they put it like somewhere it'll be like on just the way the constraints are in the vehicle. The header's got a crazy bend in it right there, so the flame front's way different.
Yeah.
And then you watch EGTs, you get in nitrous world, you look at EGTs, you're just like, oh, you close the laptop because you
Yeah.
think, it's like, I'm pretty sure aluminum's supposed to be gone by there.
That's what I was going to say. The EGTs on nitrous is pretty insane.
Yeah, like our carbureted like 712 deal, like watch, if you look at the AFR and you look at the EGTs, if you look at that, it showed to somebody that didn't quite understand it's just a number, they'd be like, oh, that thing's, so it blew up that fast? It's like, no, dude, that's been seasons like that. Like 2,000 and something degree EGTs, it's
Yeah.
no big deal. It's like, yeah, but it's like 14-1. It's like, yeah, it's a nitrous car. Like you've got to realize the flame front's this far outside the car.
Yeah.
Like, you're doing all kinds of timing stuff to do something that's super violent. You're trying to tame it down enough that it doesn't just shatter everything.
Tame enough. Not tame, but tame enough. Yeah.
There's that fine line. When it works, it works. When it doesn't, wow, damn.
Oh, yeah, it's catastrophic.
But it's entertaining. You watch the guys, they'll have a car, like a grudge car or something, and they want to be think it's super cool to do a John Force burnout, but the car doesn't make enough power on nuts to do a John Force burnout, so they want to spray it in the burnout. You watch them blow all the Bondo out of the hood and everything, and the track guys are trying to pick Bondo and paint off the road, and it's just a rough time.
That's horrible. What about so standalone versus stock ECU stuff? Do you prefer the standalone because it actually does what you tell it to do?
It takes less time to do things.
Well, yeah.
I could have a stock ECU car come in and you could spend all day on that thing, but if it was like the same deal with a Holley or whatever, Holley ECU Master or anything, you can do it in like half the time. Drivability is easier. You're not hunting tables and like trying to find the background table that makes you do something. Like I ran into it recently on like a Godzilla deal and a swap truck, and the current HP Tuners firmware software I had on my laptop didn't have one table. Like the thing would run into a rev limiter magically. I can't remember what it was, but it was like 4,500 to run into the rev limiter every single time. Go through the whole thing, change every rev limiter, everything. And like I finally got to the point, I'm like, man, okay, I'm just going to update the software. Like I've already spent 2 hours on this thing already. Update the software and go into it. I'm like, oh, there's the table. Like, oh, sweet, that's handy. Couldn't put it in the other one. Like that would have been real handy a little while ago.
Yeah, that's a constant battle, is not having enough stuff defined, things like that. But the factory ECU, I guess I like it because of the challenge, but the standalone stuff is much nicer, much cleaner. I just wondered on the Coyote stuff, like I said, how much different that is from the conventional stuff that we knew, which was regular port. But I guess you're tuning that just like a regular port now, right?
Yeah, a lot of it. But I don't deal a bunch with the DI Coyote stuff because most of the stock ECU stuff, I try to stay in that Gen 1, Gen 2 type stuff, not step into the 3s and the 4s, and you start getting into more weird shit. Just like there's only so many hours in a day.
Oh yeah.
Like if it's not something cool, like I'll dive into it if I think it's worth the time to teach it. Like, oh, I want to learn this, I'll do that. But sometimes the juice isn't worth the squeeze.
Right.
Like, you got to try to not do certain things.
When if your customer base is already used to the standalone stuff,
yeah, it's just
it works.
It just makes it easier. Like for example, like you go have a guy send a log from Holley or a Fuel Tech. Fuel Tech, for example, a guy sends a log from Fuel Tech. It sends the tune file and the log all in one. It's all here. Or Holley, like I got some guys, like Manuel's famously complains about it all the time. He's like, oh man, the junk ass Holley, I gotta send you a tune file and the log. Like, man, it's not that hard. You can email it. Where like stock ECU stuff, you got to send the dude a layout and
Channels,
everything. And then
layout,
if you screw up, you send the guy out on a data log and you missed a channel. They're like, come back and like, dude, my God, man, I forgot to put AD counts on that thing, MAF AD counts. So or MAF period on it. And like, sorry to say, but like everything you just did, yeah, my bad, bro.
And remote, I have to hope that they loaded the channels properly. So I had to make a video and put that in the link. But then they never watch that, so I'm just like,
yeah,
go watch the video. Make sure you load the channels because everything you did was wrong.
Yeah.
Oh, you tuned the Blue Fox too, right? Forgot about that.
Oh, memos? Yeah.
Yeah. Damn.
Yeah.
Holley one?
Yeah, that one's a Holley. And Anxiety, that's a Holley. It'd be interesting when it gets them out, but there's quite a few cars out there that, like a lot of the cars around Louisiana, it's like the low key that I do a bunch of them around there mainly because headers only kind of just whores me out down there. Yeah. To the guys that the nice thing about that, like working by word of mouth, you have good customers and the good customers kind of vet out the people you don't want.
Yeah.
It's a great way to work. Like I'm glad I've been real lucky the whole time I've had my business. I've never ever had to go looking for work. There's always a lineup to do it, and then you can kind of pick and choose and not have to have that fret. It's like, man, like what am I gonna do today? Like twirling your thumbs, freaking out, but like I kind of would like that sometimes now though. But you get a bunch of guys and they only tell their friends that they know they're gonna pay, or they know that they're actually gonna know they own a laptop. Now you get some of the old boys, they put EFI on their car and they realize, oh, they don't even have a laptop. Like, how are you gonna do this? Like you need this. This is a critical part of this, and to go to the track, like you need to get logs with the laptop. You need to be able to send it somehow.
I just had a guy book the tune, didn't have an HP tuner or a wideband, was relying on somebody else to get the HP tuner, and then got pissed off at me that he had the wrong wideband. He had an autometer.
What the hell?
Wideband, and I'm like, how's this my fault? Yeah, well, you're supposed to do what? It's remote, fool.
Where's my refund?
Here's a list of
Oh, I
the
refunded
requirements.
it. It was not even worth dealing with. Yeah.
No refund.
And of course, it was a 99 Camaro.
Yeah, so you,
fuck.
So I didn't want to do it anyways. I was like, oh, thank God. My wife's like, you're going to refund them? Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
I don't want any of this.
Not even worth it. But what about like when you go to the track? It's a big thing for me, and more of an appreciation thing than anything. When you go out and spend the day at the track and you get these guys that, they'll be like, here, man, here's a couple $100, thank you.
Yeah.
People don't understand how far that goes.
Oh yeah,
Or you'll get the guy that you're out there all day and he's like, man, thank you.
yeah, sweet.
And I'm not going back to the track with you.
Yeah, like
If
you
you just
can only do
ruin
it
that.
out of love for so long. Love, like
Well, like you want to do it for
and
love,
passion
right?
of
But
it.
people got to understand that you're taking, when we go to the track, like it's a lot of time out of your day.
Yeah.
It's time away from your family. While you're having fun, it's not as fun for us. It's fun, but it's a job too.
Yeah, you're constantly running around.
Yeah.
What would you call that? Track support? No.
Yeah, but sometimes, like when I do track support, I don't give them a price. If I'm going to go to the track, I'm invested in that vehicle.
Yeah.
Let's go. But I'd say 9.5 out of 10 people are like, here, man, here's a couple $100, thank you.
Yeah.
Or if I'm going and I'm having to go to them, they're paying for flight, hotel, first class, unlike you. But they'll pay for flight, hotel, and still give you a couple $100. Just be like, they show their appreciation, and that makes us drive way harder because we want to know he paid. Let's make sure he gets everything, and I want to be like that for everybody. But sometimes you'll get people that you'll go out to the track and you'll even fly in, and they'll be like, all right, man, thank you.
Yeah,
And it's like you don't want to be a dick. You'll never say nothing.
Yeah.
But
it's
They
part
probably
of it.
think like, oh, that's what he's here for, to fix my shit or like work. You know what I mean? I don't know. I'm just saying. As a consumer looking at it that way, I'm just
asking, is that how you would view
no.
that?
I would if I were to look at I were to do that, I'd
Haven't
be
been
like,
on
hey,
that
how
other
much I owe
side.
you? I'd be like, hey, how much I owe you?
Right.
That's
right.
how I would do it.
Like, some of these guys won't say anything.
Oh no, I'd be like, hey, how much I owe you?
And then you tune their car for them like 9 months before that, and then now they're going to the track and they expect it all for free.
Yeah, no.
But that's a more recent thing than it's ever been before. Before, I've never had that happen. Recently, I've had a few times that's happened, and I was like, man, that's kind of mind blowing. That somebody would expect you to show up, be
Yeah.
there, and not pay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you realize like you're taking it away from doing other stuff all day long.
Right,
Like-
right.
like a
Because you're
couple
not
$100
working on
is
somebody
a-
else's car while you're at the track with them.
Yeah.
Because you're going to put that undivided attention in there.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. Usually, a lot of events we have, like I'll have 4 or 5 cars, so we back and forth, and like by the end of the day, they're just like, dude, here's a beer, chill. Like you can stop now. We'll look at it in the morning. Like,
Yeah.
and like you're just wore out from running around. Like it's simple things. Like you're there with a couple cars. Like, hey, take my scooter. It's like, oh, dude, thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not gonna fucking die today.
I've had that happen. I went to the ice cream cruise. I ended up going out and buying 2 mini bikes for me and my wife because I was like, this is ridiculous. So we went and bought mini bikes just to have to ride around on the track because it was so far back and forth. But like I said, it seems the customer appreciation thing is dwindling more, and I don't know if it's like the market or if that's just how people are.
Entitlement or
Meanwhile, everybody else is asking for tips.
yeah,
Everywhere.
yeah. You can't. It's like, oh, thanks for. Oh, you order your McDonald's, you want a tip, or anywhere you got to stand at a counter, they want a tip.
Yeah.
It's like I phone my order in, you want a tip? Like I'm coming to pick it up myself.
Oh my gosh.
I just think that's something that a lot of people don't realize, and we don't say a lot about it because it is what it is.
Yeah,
you
you
make
wanna
your
be a
decision,
dick.
but I think people really got to realize that if we're there and we're spending our time, we're there because we want to make your car the best it can be. You should at least compensate.
Yeah, yeah. We can only do so much. Just because our name's attached to it, and you want to make sure it's right.
Right.
Like that only goes so far. Like you can only cover that by.
Yeah, do you get that often? They're like, "Oh man, I could make a big name for you," and I'm like,
Like you don't
Bro.
think there's other guys that could do the
Yeah.
exact same thing as you?
"They're gonna pay and do the same thing,"
Yeah.
but people
get-
think we make all kind of money too. That's
That's
we
not the
spend
thing.
more in traveling than we make.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Or you get it. Like luckily I don't have to travel too much, but you get a lot of the shops, they don't realize when you have a bunch of builds going on, the upfront parts.
Oh yeah,
And then you got to float a couple things. And then if you don't get a certain build out by a certain time because one part hung you up and then you're hung out to dry on all this stuff, Like it sucks.
Yeah, I think that's what
Or
Calvo was
people
telling
don't realize
us
when
about.
you send a bill and they don't pay it right dead bang on. They're like, oh, 2 weeks later, I'll hit them 2 weeks.
Yeah.
2 weeks. Like, dude, like you skip that 2 weeks. Like homeboy might, like that thing might have been on credit or something. And he spotted you to get it because he didn't have the cash flow at that time. And then he's paying interest on that.
Yeah.
And so any money like the $5 or whatever he would have made on the product is gone.
Yeah, but Calvo was telling us that, you know, sometimes he'll be floating $75,000, $150,000
Yeah.
on some of these builds, just trying to get everything to keep processing. And I'm like, man, can you imagine? People don't realize the amount of stress that would put on people. But
Especially bigger shops like Calvo and those places that they have to do payroll too. So you have that's coming out of the same cash flow pot.
and payroll don't stop just because you didn't pay your bill.
Exactly.
Yep.
Like everybody's got a family. Everybody needs to be fed. People rely on, like, I'm glad it's only me. I couldn't imagine the pressure running a shop like that where you got to be, like, you're responsible for everybody else's nut. Like, there's people's families that rely on you. Luckily, it's just me, and I just get stressed all the time just because that's what you do.
Just live stressed.
Yeah, like
I'm used to that now.
It's like, oh yeah, there's the once in a while you get like oh man, I like it. You go hop on a plane. It's like, man, I don't have Wi-Fi. I can't do anything right now.
It's kind of peaceful.
It's not bad. Like we used to always go once a year. We go camping for 1 week. The one rule we have with camping is we go somewhere where there's no cell reception for like 10, 15 miles. Like I don't want I can walk up this hill and answer my phone. I'm like, we're untouched here.
It's something I had to implement as we were going because, you know, as my kids were growing up, until, you know, when my boys were up to like 3 or 4 years old, it's like one day they were 3 and 4, and I'm like,
they're only young.
what the hell happened? So my next 2 kids, you know, sorry for the boys, but my next 2 kids, I'm like, man, I'm not doing that no more. Yeah. So Sunday, Monday, that's my days off. If I decide to work, I'll work. Cool. If not, most of the Sunday, Mondays, I don't even take my phone with me.
Yeah,
I leave it. We go hit the beach. You know, we go to the rainforest or we go do something with the family. No phones, no nothing.
Yeah.
But you'd be surprised how much it'll change your mentality once you start doing that.
Oh, yeah.
It took me a long time to want to do it. But once I started doing that, it made me a lot more efficient on the days that I was working because I was recharged. I was good. I was ready to go.
Yeah, I've been lucky. The family, like, if I go anywhere, I'm like they're coming with me because they're all huge into cars.
Yeah.
Recently, my boy started racing junior drag, so we go to the track. We'll take his car too, and he runs his car while I'm doing everything else because it's a lawnmower.
What's the future for Merkl? For Dylan Merkl?
Man, I would like to finally be past the whole starting of the business and get over the hump where I can actually get my own vehicles out and enjoy them and not feel guilty about it. Because that's a tough point with a lot of stuff. Like I got my big tire car I want to get out that I've just had all kinds of issues with. And then get all the stuff that I broke when the kids were born back together and running because it's a slippery slope. And just get to the point where you can actually, like you say, like you'll be able to take a day off here and there and it's not constant go, go, go. Like, for example, coming down here, my family's out sightseeing. And like, there's work to be done. And I want to do it. I got to get it done because I have obligation for it. But it'd be nice to be able to I'll stay another day and we'll go chill and do something. But it is what it is. It's stepping stones. You got to get to that point.
Work-life balance.
Yep.
Dylan, man, we appreciate you coming on the pod.
Well, thank you.
It's really good to meet you finally and actually kind of learn your story.
Yeah. It's not the social media ghost that I am.
No, it's all right.
Yeah.
It's good. It's all good.
How do they find you on social media? Carrier pigeon? Or
Man,
Dylan
smoke signals?
I might not post, but I
Dylan
answer.
Merkl?
Yeah, Dylan Merkl or Merkl Motorsport on Facebook and Instagram. Instagram's still Merkl Motorsport.
Can they ship cars to you or how does that work?
Man, I don't know about the American stuff, how it would be for them getting across the border and everything. But
got you.
They could ship. I've got guys inquire about it, and we just get so tied up on stuff. But it's usually for full builds, like it's like a year or two out on everything.
Yeah.
We'll try to sneak in tunes and stuff and small fabrication jobs, but usually it's booked out pretty far. You want to drop something off, don't expect to see it like for a year minimum.
But it'll be right when it's done.
Exactly. It'll have a week of drive time on it. Some of the cars, you put the wife in it, and if she can drive it and not complain about anything, you know it's okay.
Yep.
Guys, make sure you check out JustinWhiteTuned on Facebook, Instagram. Hit him up for all your GM tuning. Check out Dylan Merkl, Instagram, Facebook, MerklMotorsports.com. And then, just hit him up. Thank you for watching for our podcast. We got to go. Peace.